Chapter 53-55. The next morning, Arbor was woken up by the clamor in the court. She looked up at the bed veil, and then at the brilliant sunlight shining in through the window. Presumably it was already noon. Recently, her drowsiness had become more and more serious, but every time she checked her pulse, there was nothing wrong with it. Not only was there nothing wrong with it, but her body was as healthy as a calf. She took a body-strengthening pill every 3 days, and the royal physicians lined up to check her pulse 3 times in the morning, noon, and night. She was healthy every time, so healthy that it made everyone envious. But it was this perfectly healthy body that was incredibly drowsy every day. Especially during this period of time, she would fall asleep at the appointed time. She had to sleep at the appointed time every night, and would only wake up at the appointed time every day. When she was awake, she was as lively as a dragon, and as lively as a tiger, and she could beat a cow to death, even if they were separated by a mountain. But when it was time for the afternoon, she had to sleep again at the appointed time. When it was time for the afternoon, she would get up to move around, and have a meal when it was time for the evening. She would crawl into bed and sleep soundly. It was such a comical cycle. Sir Jojo did some calculations for himself. Excluding the time needed to eat and wash up, she would probably only be awake for 2 hours in the afternoon. No wonder all the royal maids and eunuchs around him were so nervous, as if they were facing a great enemy. It was truly because their crown princess had slept for too long. However, His Highness the Crown Prince, who had always doted on the crown princess, wasn't that nervous this time. He merely glanced at his wife's stomach with an indescribable gaze every time. Arbor shuffled off the bed. When she looked up, she saw Tsaishio push open the door and enter, hastily running toward her. "Crown Princess, why did you come down by yourself?" Sir Jojo expressionlessly stroked her stomach and bounced lightly. "Don't look at how big my stomach is. In fact, my body is as light as a swallow right now, and I can even carry the wind with me when I walk." Tsaishio silently lowered her head, and the corner of her mouth involuntarily twitched. However, her movements weren't slow, and she had already gone up to support the young crown princess. "Crown Princess, let this servant help you to wash up." The little stoic feigned indifference and asked, "Why is it so noisy outside?" Kaishio pursed her lips and smiled. "His Highness the Crown Prince has brought Master, Madam, Second Master, and Second Madam's family to the Eastern Palace. What your Highness means is that it will be the new year soon. Your body is getting heavier by the day, so it's not convenient for you to come and go. Why don't you bring everyone over and stay in the palace to celebrate the new year together?" The little stoic's eyes brightened, but her expression remained haughty and delicate as she quietly muttered, "He's the only one who's meddlesome." Kaichi walked over and heard these words. She quickly held back her laughter and said, "When this servant came over just now, I saw Miss Lin, pulling a few palace maids and playing with the teapot. Miss Lin, must have achieved a complete victory." The little stoic uttered an, "Oh," and put on a small, "I'm not too interested" expression, but her feet involuntarily walked towards the door. Kaishio hurriedly smiled and pulled her. "Crown Princess, please let this servant do your hair before going out." "MHM," Kaichi also said. "You still have to change your clothes." Only then did the little stoic realize that in her happiness, she wanted to rent out her uncombed hair and clothes just like that. Hence, this fellow resentfully stopped and nodded, saying in deadly earnest, "Bring that red one over." The crown princess really had a lot of red battle clothes. Chapter 53-56. Holding back her laughter, Saichi took out a red dress of the latest design for her, and quickly walked to her side. After the little crown princess finished washing up and putting on her clothes, she subconsciously reached out to stroke her round belly, and asked in all seriousness, "Saishio, do you feel that my entire body is emitting heat recently? Especially around my belly. It seems like heat waves are rolling in." Sometimes, when she touched it herself, she could feel that her belly was a little hot. It was simply a little comical. The corner of Tsaishio's mouth twitched, and she calmly nodded. "That's right. But Crown Princess, your belly doesn't allow others to get close. Whenever someone wants to touch it, they will be shaken away. Cough. That's why we don't feel the heat waves from afar." She was pregnant, and so was the crown princess. But why did they feel that the crown princess's pregnancy was so strange and miraculous? The little crown princess nodded and lightly patted her belly. She muttered to herself, "Child, you have to be good. Don't be like your father. Your father tormented his mother badly back then. You can't be like him." Saishio and Saichi held back their laughter and looked at each other. Then, they followed the nagging crown princess and walked out. Just as they left the bedchamber, they saw Wei Ziqin and Auntie Run walking over together. When the two saw her, they smiled happily and hurried over to ask, "Jojo, when did you wake up? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? The imperial physicians have been waiting outside for a long time. Why don't you call them in?" Ren hurriedly said. Arbor thought for a moment and nodded. Those old grandpas didn't have it easy. They were arranged here by His Majesty and the Empress, and they had to treat her 3 meals a day. The psychological pressure of being on tenterhooks must be very great. The sooner they finished their treatment, the sooner they could calm their restless hearts and arrange for them to return to their rooms to rest. Not long after, 7 or 8 old physicians walked in and took the little crown princess's pulse as usual. A head imperial physician with the surname Zhang said, "The crown princess's pulse is stable and healthy." But Wei Ziqin's heart skipped a beat when she heard the old imperial physician's words. She asked nervously, "But what?" Old imperial physician Zhang hurriedly said, "Madam Qiao, there is no need to worry. I just think that the crown princess's hypersomnia is a little serious." Now, the crown princess was awake for no more than 6 hours a day. She slept for a total of 16 to 18 hours a day. The imperial physicians felt that something was wrong, and they were panicking. He was just worried that something would happen to this golden nugget. If that happened, even the 9 generations of his family would be implicated. The little crown princess gave them a kind smile. But this strange smile, in the eyes of the imperial physicians, felt that the little crown princess was giving them a very serious and cold smile. The hearts of the old physicians could not help but tremble. The little stoic said to the elderly physicians, "You don't need to worry. I know my body very well, there's nothing wrong with it. All right, you can all go back and rest first." Wei Ziqin watched as the 2 eunuchs sent the physicians back. She looked at Arbor with deep worry. "Jojo, you can't hide anything from Mom." "Mom, I'm not hiding anything from you." Arbor looked at his mother helplessly. "It's really nothing, Mom. How about I demonstrate a sword technique for you to see?" Wei Ziqin and Ren Madam quickly pounced over to pull her back. Chapter 53-57. The 2 of them hurriedly cried out, Don't. Good child, sit down. Just sit down. What swordplay? Don't scare people." Arbor was rather helpless, but he still obeyed and sat down with the help of his sisters-in-law. Wei Ziqin heaved a sigh of relief and looked at her daughter worriedly. She couldn't help but turn her head and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Madame Ren saw this and hurriedly tugged at her sleeve. "Mother!" Shaolin suddenly jumped in front of the 3 of them and tilted her head to look at the red marks under Wei Ziqin's eyes. "What's wrong, Mother? Why are your eyes red?" "No, nothing." Wei Ziqin hurriedly waved her hand. Madame Ren smiled and pulled Xiao to Arbor's side. She stroked Xiao little head and said, "Liner, sit here with sister and talk for a while. Your mother and I will go to the kitchen to get lunch. Your mother personally cooked today, and specially made braised fish and silver thread tofu soup. You guys are in for a treat." Arbor couldn't help but feel helpless. "Second aunt, just get 2 palace maids to get it." No need. They don't know which dishes were made by your mother." Madame Run said with a smile. "They'll be back in a while. Just wait." Madame Run hurriedly pulled Wei Ziqin away and walked around the flowering trees in the courtyard. After walking a little further, she said, "Sister-in-law, don't cry. If the child sees you, I'm afraid she'll be nervous too." Wei Ziqin couldn't help but tear up. "But Jojo's belly changes every day. It's like it's growing crazily. It looks too big now. She's such a young child, and this is her first child. How can she bear it?" In Wei Ziqin's view, her daughter was still a child, but now she had to suffer so much. With such a big belly, her daughter must be putting on an act in front of them every time. She only made it sound easy, but in reality, she must be suffering a lot. Jojo, this child is always like this. She refuses to tell us everything, and only bears it silently. Wei Zichin's eyes reddened as she choked with sobs. Sister-in-law, don't worry. Our family's Qiao Qiao has always been a blessed child. Nothing will happen to her. Besides, the emperor and the empress had also sent many experienced old nannies over. He even hired 5 midwives. With us by her side, Jojo and his mother will be safe. Wei Zichin replied in a nasal voice and nodded heavily. After the two of them hurriedly left, Emolien's slender figure appeared under a flowering tree. She silently looked at the backs of Wei Zichin and Ren Sure as they left. Her hands under her sleeves were clenched into fists. Arbor suddenly realized that her husband seemed to be getting more and more bored. She didn't know if it was because the imperial court had started to take a break, but this fellow had nothing to do all day long. He hung around her all day long, and even wanted to pass a cup of tea to her mouth. He didn't even let her hold a book. Reading books is harmful to your eyes and your body. Let's wait until after you give birth, and have some free time to read. This fellow didn't know if he was possessed, but he kept spouting nonsense every day. She had already told him that her body was fine, but this fellow was still suspicious. He kept thinking that she was pretending to be relaxed and at ease. It's because your husband is incompetent. I'm not as attentive as mother and second aunt. I neglected you a lot in the past. Last night, this fellow had held her hand with a serious expression and said, "Don't worry, until you give birth to the child. Your husband will always be by your side to accompany you and take care of you. Why are you looking at your husband like that?" Chapter 53-58. This guy kissed her and completely ignored her sullen expression. He said to himself, "Wifey, you must be very happy. Your husband will definitely keep an eye on you day and night." Arbor really wanted to slap him until he fainted. She didn't know what went wrong, but her husband suddenly changed. She wanted to say that she really didn't need someone to keep an eye on her. She swore that she could kill a dragon from a distance right now. There was nothing wrong with her body. Her body was as light as a swallow, and she didn't feel bloated and powerless like a pregnant woman in the later stages of pregnancy. Why didn't her husband understand human language? "Husband, you don't have to keep accompanying me." Xiao Mian's face was expressionless as she said mercilessly, "You can go do whatever you need to do." This man was simply too annoying. It wasn't like her hands were crippled. He even wanted to deprive her of the joy of peeling oranges. So annoying. Just looking at his handsome face was enough for Lord Jojo. Emolian blinked and watched in confusion as his wife slammed the palace door shut, shutting him outside. Puffed ha 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 ha. A mocking laugh came from behind. Emolian didn't need to turn around to know who dared to arrogantly mock the crown prince. "Rotten peach blossoms, are you itching for a beating?" Emolian gritted her teeth. Hu Shurchen shook the wine pot with one hand and said with a smile, "Jojo already dislikes you so much. I advise you not to be an eyesore." Emolian was about to retort when a palace servant hurriedly came to report that Her Majesty the Empress had arrived. Bai Wuxia came to see his daughter-in-law with a carriage full of tonics. After a few words, he stared at his daughter-in-law's stomach with worry. Later, the emperor bestowed a lot of things and sent several experienced nannies over. The group of people was nervous, causing the entire Eastern Palace to be jittery. That night, Prince Emo ran back to his bedchamber with his face covered in dirt. He repeatedly complained to his wife that he had been summoned by Imperial Mother and severely scolded. Arbor was baffled. "Why is Mother scolding you all of a sudden?" "Imperial Mother scolded your husband for being unreliable, saying that I didn't stay by your side to take good care of you, saying that your belly is already so big. I still wander around outside all day long. Don't you see me staying in the bedroom and not leaving the house at all? I'm considerate and accompanying you." Arbor couldn't help but laugh. "Husband, you know I'm fine. Since when have you been so gullible? After what my mother and second aunt said, even you think that my belly is abnormally big and that it will be difficult for me to give birth." Emolian gazed at her with a profound gaze, and he reflexively grasped her hand as he stammered, I really am a bit worried." Arbor looked at him and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Don't be so nervous with them, okay? Look. It's your nonchalant attitude that makes people panic." Emolian suddenly reached out to hug her, and pressed her forehead against hers. He said unhappily, "You always look like you're the one holding up the sky even if it falls down. I can help you with everything else, but this matter, I really can't help you at all." Arbor really couldn't control her laughter. She laughed at him and teased, "Why don't we use the soul-swapping talisman? And you help me give birth." Emolian looked at his wife with a dumbfounded expression. This wife, why is she so outstanding and different from the rest? Chapter 5360. Husband, I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I feel like I'm about to level up again. Emolian was speechless. It seems like my divine senses are about to level up too. I feel like I haven't been cultivating properly recently. After I got pregnant, I rarely went to the star sector. Why am I leveling up again? Sir Jojo was perplexed. Husband, do you think other pregnant women are like this too? Emolian looked serious. Wife, I don't think anyone is like you. You're a special case. Why don't you guess, husband? I guess baby Emo is doing something in your stomach. Xiaomu was startled, and then she carefully recalled it before coming to a realization. Hubby, I must agree with your view. Husband, when you look at me, do you see any strange movements in my stomach? The two mumbled as they walked towards the bed. The two maidservants, Kai Xiao and Kai Chi, stifled a belly full of laughter. They quickly followed, put down the gold-threaded curtain, and quietly retreated out of the door. In the following days, everyone was quite busy. Third Fu Wushuang and Qi Xianxian, the two newlyweds, successfully got married and completed an important event in their lives. They heard that Third Fu's stepmother, Madame Bao, fainted from anger because Third Young Master Fu was promoted to the youngest first-rank Guardian General. The courtiers knew that His Majesty was already preparing for the Crown Prince's ascension to the throne. He was promoting a group of young talents, and they would become the new emperor's trusted aides in the future. Because Sir Jojo was seriously ill, His Majesty specially allowed him not to attend the New Year's banquet. Right now, Crown Prince Emo was guarding his wife at all times. Wherever his wife was, he would be there. On New Year's Eve, many fireworks were set off after the banquet to celebrate. His Majesty was probably in a good mood. This was the first time the Empress spent the New Year with him, after she woke up. Arbor was in a good mood today. She stayed up with her family. Xiao's son had already come out of seclusion 2 days ago. Looking at the lively scene in the courtyard, he couldn't help but feel emotional. I remember that everyone hasn't gathered together for a long time. Let's celebrate the new year together. Jolin smiled and nodded. Yes. Ever since elder sister left home to study at the Holy Water sect, she rarely spent New Year's with them. After that they went to the 6 prefectures, and then to the Divine Land. They thought that their sister would be further and further away from their family. Unexpectedly, as long as the hearts of family members were connected, they would not be separated no matter where they went. It's coming, it's coming. The hot dumplings are here. Qi Xianxian smiled and called out to her companions, helping them to take over the plates that the little palace maids were busy handing over. There are all kinds of fillings. Help yourself. Everyone held their bowls and eagerly lined up to get dumplings. They shouted, I don't want the sauce. I want it, 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 I want it. As Qiao Mu and Emolian sat under the lantern light, they would occasionally raise their heads to glance at the rowdy crowd. The man's fingers were long and slender as he peeled pine nuts with his head lowered. The woman expressionlessly reached out her small paw from time to time to take the pine nuts he had peeled from his palm. In the eyes of the crowd, the two of them looked like an old married couple, sitting there calmly, one peeling pine nuts, the other eating pine nuts, the other peeling pine nuts, the other eating pine nuts, the appearance of leisure and peace. Emolian suddenly clapped his hands and took out a jade messenger talisman from his bosom. Chapter 5361. Sir Jojo didn't even look up as he coolly asked, What are you saying, Duanyu? Emolian was taken aback. He glanced at his wife and coughed lightly. How about wife, you take a look for yourself. The little stoic extended a claw without hesitation. Emolian speechlessly placed the communication jade talisman in her palm. Arbor inspected it and harumphed. Oh, you two are in contact quite frequently. Emolienne speechlessly twitched her mouth before saying with an embarrassed chuckle, "It's usually him contacting me. And him contacting me, haha." Jojo's Lien, Duan Yu said he dug up a lot of holy stone ores. Arbor's eyes lit up, and she said, "Oh right, didn't you say that Huifeng, Venerable Immortal Jin, Zhaoxing Liang Yi, and the others will return after the new year? How many holy stone ores did they dig up compared to Duan Yu's?" Emolienne grumpily retorted, "How could that be the same? Duan Yu, that guy, sent many people to dig. There aren't many people left at Huifeng's place, so the progress won't be that fast. Moreover, they also spent a lot of time dispelling the array that forefather Chao Yang left behind. Forefather Chao Yang was truly too deceitful. Thankfully, Venerable Immortal Jin and the other 3 transcending divinity realms were left there. Otherwise, Huifeng and his bunch of weaklings might not be able to escort a portion of the ores back so smoothly." Arbor pursed her lips. "In other words, you're not as reliable as Duan Yu." "Wife, what did you say?" Emolienne dangerously narrowed her eyes. Arbor quickly shut her mouth and continued to look down at his communication jade talisman. "Hubby, Duan Yu said he'll come to visit us after the new year." Emolienne harumphed, both agreeing and disagreeing. "Last time, he gave Wa a piece of jade, but I don't know what it's for. That jade doesn't look like an ordinary item. It can't be something like a token, right?" Arbor asked curiously. "Wa quite likes this jade. When I held it, baby seemed to be happy for a while, and my stomach felt warm." The corners of Emolienne's mouth twitched. She thought to herself, "This is not good. Why does it seem like this child doesn't reject anyone? What if he was cheated by someone with a piece of candy? What's so funny about a piece of broken jade? I'll give you 10,000 pieces of jade later. Every piece is more exquisite and beautiful than this." Arbor rolled his eyes at him. "What do I need so much jade for? You can cut me some blank jade pieces and keep them for emergencies. His Majesty has arrived. Her Majesty has arrived." Everyone hurriedly stood up upon hearing this, but Celestial Empress and Celestial Empress had already walked in hand like a gust of wind. Emma Lushing laughed heartily and said, all right, don't be in a hurry to salute." The family was staying up late to celebrate the new year, so there was no need to stand on ceremony. "Sit down, eat, drink, and do whatever you need to do. Mother is here to see Jojo," Bai Wuxia said to the Crown Prince with a smile. "The royal physicians have been nagging that she'll probably give birth in these few days. Crown Prince, you have to stay by your wife's side these few days and pay attention." "Mother, I don't need you to remind me," Emolienne huffed. "I've always been careful and cautious." Okay, I know you're careful. It's just that Mother is worried." Bai Wuxia turned around and quickly pulled Wei Ziqin to say with a smile, "In-law, don't be busy. Come, sit down. Today, we'll have a lively meal of dumplings. Everyone present is family, so there's no need to be restrained." Chapter 5363. The situation became tense all of a sudden. The Emperor had summoned the Crown Prince and the courtiers early in the morning. They had been extremely busy since the first day of the Lunar New Year, and had been discussing for the entire day. On the second day of the Lunar New Year, the Imperial Court had issued various prohibitions and measures. Emolienne basically handed over everything to Third Fu and the others, while he himself stayed by his wifey's side and accompanied her obediently without setting a foot outside. The pitiful third young master, who had just been married, had been as busy as a spinning top these days. Arbor and Emolienne, this unscrupulous couple, had become the most free couple in the entire 3 states. Since Qiao was addicted to sleeping all day long, Emolienne would sleep with her. Occasionally, she would get up and walk around, and Prince Emma would follow closely. The two of them spent 24 hours a day together, and after 3 days, Arbor could not help but roll her eyes at him. "The situation outside is so tense, as the Crown Prince. Don't you have anything else to do?" "No." Emolienne was picking at the prawn meat with his head lowered. Hearing Qiao's words, he hurriedly raised his head to glance at his wife and gave her a roguish smile. Qiao, your husband has only been by your side for 3 days, and you're already tired of it?" "You are a little annoying," Arbor criticized inwardly. She pursed her lips. Don't you have to share some of father's burdens these days? No need. Prince Mo hurriedly dragged the stool towards his wife and wrapped his arms around her waist. Jojo, I have received father's verbal instructions. I don't have to worry about anything during this period and can just stay by your side. Actually, I am not that delicate. Arbor shook her head speechlessly. With my current body, I can go up the mountain and hunt a few tigers, wolves and leopards without any problem. However, in the middle of the night, Jojo, who was going up the mountain to hunt tigers, wolves and leopards, suddenly opened her eyes. She tried to move herself into the star region, but felt no reaction. However, her mental connection with Qiuqiu still existed, and she heard Qiuqiu shouting in her mental domain. Master Silver, you've really hit the jackpot. What? It seems like our star field is about to be promoted. My heavens, Master, what's going on? Qiuqiu really didn't expect this. The last fragment hasn't been found yet, and this star domain is about to advance into a saint domain. Ha 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 ha. Master Silver, your luck today is excellent. Why don't you go out and take a stroll? Who knows, you might be able to pick up a treasure or a mine or something. Ha ha ha. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless. He couldn't be bothered to continue the conversation with this crazy sapling. Meanwhile, on the other side, when Xiaomu opened her eyes, Emolien, who was sleeping beside her, abruptly woke up with a start. He quickly turned his head to look at her. Xiao, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Arbor shook his head with a strange expression. I think I'm about to give birth. Emolien's drowsiness promptly vanished, and he shot up from the bed. He hastily waved his hand to light up a row of lamps. As he hastily put on his clothes, he shouted outside. Quick, someone come quickly. Go and call the midwives and mamas over. Let the imperial physicians wait outside. Don't be nervous. Actually, I don't feel much. Arbor helplessly tugged at his sleeve. Looking at him, he was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. His expression was also very serious. She also didn't know how to persuade him to relax. This was actually very mysterious. She suddenly woke up in the middle of the night because she felt that she was about to give birth. But in reality, her feelings weren't as strong as those of a typical pregnant woman. Chapter 5368. Ordinary people did not know what the dark red in the sky was, but they were very clear about it. This was the tribulation of thunder and fire that came from the heavenly punishment. Usually, they would only see it during the 5 spirits' reincarnation. At this moment, they felt that the heavenly punishment was coming rather fiercely. For some reason, they felt flustered and exasperated. They did not know if it was just their imagination. At this moment, in an ordinary farm on the outskirts of the capital, young Master Omega Kotoku received a message from a spy in the city. The tribulation of thunder and fire is heading towards the palace. It is suspected that the crown princess has given birth. Further investigation is required. Young Master Omega Kotoku silently burned the message to ashes and turned to walk into the house. Just as the news was being transmitted in all directions. At this moment in the inner court of the Eastern Palace, the tribulation of thunder and fire came with a bang. When Emolien walked out, he discovered that everyone outside was hollering madly. Originally, they were hiding in the corners and under the eaves, watching the situation in the sky. Now they were inexplicably chased out by the tribulation of thunder and fire. Qi Xianxian asked Little Fatty with a confused expression. Did you advance? No. Ko Hongwen was also confused as he looked at his wife. The two of them turned to look in Duanmuqing's direction at the same time. They realized that the tribulation of thunder and fire was also fiercely chasing after Duanmuqing. It was as if the heavens had eyes. It did not strike any of the eunuchs and palace maids who were stunned and trembling like wooden chickens. It specifically targeted cultivators who were above the divine state. The tribulation of thunder and fire seemed to be a little anxious. What was going on? Who is advancing? Little Fatty covered his head and scurried away. He could not help but roar angrily. No one is advancing. Damn it. When I was in the 5 spirits reincarnation, there was only one tribulation of thunder and fire. Looking at the way the heavenly Tao struck people indiscriminately, it was as if all the cultivators above the divine state stepped on its tail. It struck everyone it saw. Xiao Lin and Xiao Sun had not broken through to the divine state. This tribulation of thunder and fire from the heavenly Tao had nothing to do with them. Therefore he walked through the crowd with a gloating expression and asked, "Is everyone okay? Do you want to hide in the house?" A bolt of lightning accompanied by flames smashed onto the left side of the turret, blasting out a few dark guards with high cultivation. Everyone was speechless. They did not know what was going on. They only felt that the heavenly Tao might have gone crazy. Otherwise, why would it suddenly come over in such a ferocious manner? As soon as Wuxia stepped out of the door, she was hit by a bolt of lightning. She was so shocked that she stopped and quickly shrank back. Wei Ziqin and Madame Ren hurriedly ran over. Their faces were full of shock as they asked with concern, "Esteemed Empress, are you injured?" No. Wuxia shook his head and quickly dragged Princess Wushuang, who had rushed to the door, into the room. "Don't stay outside. It's safe here." When Princess Wushuang was outside, she was struck by the thunder fire and doubted life. At this moment, the sound of thunder and fire suddenly disappeared from his ears. Only then did he realize that he had barged into the crown princess's bedroom while he was running away. What happened? And Wushuang combed the messy hair on her head and wiped her small face. Which fellow is secretly advancing in rank here? Look, he has angered the heavenly Tao. Could it be that someone is undergoing the 5 spirits reincarnation? What reincarnation? The Empress did not know whether to laugh or cry as she pulled her and pointed behind the bed curtain. "Oh right. My sister-in-law gave birth. I have to go take a look." Chapter 5369. Princess Wushuang yelled angrily, "It's all this crazy heavenly law's fault. I don't know why it's gone crazy. How long has it been since my 5 spirits reincarnation? Now it suddenly wants to strike me again. It's simply doing whatever it wants. Hilarious." The corner of Wei Ziqin's mouth twitched. She coughed lightly and silently suppressed the smile on her face. Why did she want to laugh when she saw the princess's wretched appearance? Princess Wushuang found a mirror and looked at herself. She grumbled angrily, "Fuck, my face is all black. It won't scare my little nephew, right?" Wuxia coughed speechlessly. "Your sister-in-law and nephew probably don't have time to bother with you right now. Take a seat first, Wushuang." "Oh right, it's so noisy outside. Will it disturb my sister-in-law? They must be very tired right now." Wuxia rolled his eyes. "They're not that tired." Madame Naren almost couldn't hold back her laughter. She hastily coughed and said, "Princess, don't worry. Take a seat first. When the crown princess and the little royal grandson finish advancing, the lightning and fire tribulation outside should be gone." Princess Wushuang turned her face away in bewilderment. Only then did she realize that the little stoic was sitting upright behind the curtain woven from golden pistols with a child in her arms. Divine power was dense in the surroundings. White mist curled around, and half of the main hall seemed to be enveloped in a celestial realm. The mother and son were absorbing divine power here, completely unaware of what was happening outside. It was as if the entire dragon flame city was surging like a storm. All the divine power within 1,000 kilometers ran toward the Eastern Palace, fighting to be the first, as if they were afraid they would be a step slower. The Eastern Palace was in a complete mess right now. All the cultivators above the God realm were collectively in trouble. No matter which corner or room you hid in, the lightning and fire of heaven and earth could strike you until you lost your temper. The most tragic were He Chun and Holy Sun Mi Yen. It was fine if they stayed in the star domain, but they had to come out to watch this bustling scene. They wanted to make fun of classmate Emolien, but they ended up losing their lives as well. The lightning and fire of heaven and earth ferociously hunted down the transcendent God realm cultivators and fiercely attacked them. How infuriating! After learning the truth, Emolien and the others were on the verge of tears. Don't you think the heavenly Tao is infuriating? It didn't dare to argue with Jojo, so it decided to argue with them instead. Who did they offend? During this period of time, the 3 of them didn't advance much. Beside the 3 of them, many of the God realm practitioners consciously stayed far away from them, afraid that they would be implicated for no reason. Originally, It was already very difficult to deal with 4 or 5 lightning fires. Crown Prince Zhichun and the others had more work to do. It would be up to them to take on a third of the lightning fire. Princess Wuxia stood there dumbfounded for a long time. She finally found her voice and asked in confusion, "The heavenly Tao, it can't be coming from my sister-in-law and the others, right?" Bai Wuxia nodded and looked at her sympathetically. "Most likely. Only the 2 of them are advancing. No one else is advancing." Princess Wuxia stood there in a daze. After a while she asked in a hoarse voice, Then why did it strike us?" "Heavens! Just who was going to advance? Did the heavens have eyes?" Bai Wuxia raised his hand and patted the back of her hand. "Maybe the heavenly Tao's eyes are blurry, and he can't see clearly for a while." Princess Wuxia stared at the Empress in front of her, as if she was looking at a god. "Empress, don't you feel guilty when you say this?" Chapter 5370. Wasn't this lie a little too fake? How bad was the heavenly law's dog eyes to be able to accurately find all the cultivators above the god realm, including the hidden guards hiding in every nook and cranny of the Eastern Palace, and only the mother and son who had advanced was missing. Wait. The mother and son who had advanced? Princess Wuxia silently repeated it before abruptly turning her head to glare in the direction of the little imperial grandson. She asked in shock, "My little nephew is going to advance? Advance what level? He couldn't have opened his mystic meridians the moment he was born, right? Could it be that he's going to advance to a great mystic cultivator?" Bai Wuxia's mouth twitched, and he said expressionlessly, "You might not believe it, but this grandson of mine is a little gifted and blessed by the heavens. The moment he was born, he was at the same cultivation realm as his mother. The Crown Prince just said that Jojo is probably going to break through to the 10th level of the God realm. I'm afraid this grandson of mine will have to follow along." Bai Wuxia realized that after he said this proudly, Princess Wuxia's jaw seemed to be about to drop. Bai Wuxia hurriedly went up to pull her and pressed her to sit down on the stool. "Wuxia, calm down. Take a deep breath. Don't be nervous. Calm down, calm down." And Wuxia stared at Empress Bai with wide eyes. "Your Majesty, you're the one who's more agitated right now. No wonder the heavens wanted to strike people. It turned out that they wanted to strike evildoers. But why did they have to implicate so many innocent bystanders hearing the ghostly wails and howls outside?" And Wuxia immediately jumped up from the stool. The situation was already very clear now. Sister-in-law gave birth to a peerless evildoer. When she advanced, the evildoer also advanced. All right, the mother and son worked together to advance, but they angered the heavenly law in the end. This coward, the heavenly law, didn't dare to find trouble with the mother and son, so it fiercely retaliated against all the cultivators above the god realm in the Eastern Palace. Bah, what a coward! Who did they offend? She had never heard of such a ridiculous thing. Jojo advanced, and the heavenly law struck her friends and family. It was truly hilarious. The urgent matter at hand was to bring in those women above the god realm and to avoid the lightning fire. Who knew how long the heavenly law would go crazy? Could it be that the heavenly Tao would strike for as long as Jojo advanced? As for those men, it was naturally inconvenient for them to enter the inner palace. Then they could only continue to endure outside. Haha, why do I feel like I'm gloating? Princess Wuxia thought as she hurriedly ran towards the door. The thunder and fire in the Eastern Palace continued for 3 days and 3 nights. All the men in the Eastern Palace who were above the divine realm were so unlucky. The great emperor, who had received a message from the Empress in advance, did not dare to step into the Eastern Palace for the past 3 days. As expected, he was spared. Jojo held baby in his arms. 3 days later, he completed his advancement and opened his eyes. What she saw were pairs of expectant eyes looking at her and her son. Princess Wuxia rushed over with tears streaming down her face. She pounded the quilt and shouted in surprise and joy, "Sister-in-law, you finally finished leveling up. If you don't complete it, I'm afraid that my third son won't be able to hold on." The White Queen's mouth twitched. The Peony Fairy smiled enchantingly and said, "Oh, the heavens have pity on us. Our Jojo has finally finished leveling up." Arbor held baby in one hand and looked confused. He led the White Queen, Princess Wuxia, Qi Xianxian, and the others to open the palace door. Chapter 5371. At a glance, she saw the people in the courtyard. They blinked their dark eyes and turned to look in her direction. Jojo's lotus, rotten peach blossom, and holy sun Miyin stood side by side. What handsome, elegant, and confident were all gone. What stood in front of Jojo were three beggars with black faces. At first glance, their entire faces were black, and their long hair was scattered messily behind their backs. They looked a little miserable and tragic. Behind them were people lying on the ground grotesquely. All of them were pounding the ground and wailing in pain. It was a pity for the group of shadow guards. They were originally handsome young men, but now they were all dressed like beggars. The little crown princess was stunned at the door for a long time. Suddenly, she pointed at them and laughed inhumanely. Ha 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 ha. The White Empress, Wei Ziqin, and the rest, who were originally silently enduring, could no longer hold it in when they heard this laughter. They also burst out laughing. Princess Wushuang and Qi Xianxian squatted on the ground laughing. Sir Jojo laughed loudly, while holding the baby with one hand. With the other hand, he took out a jade image talisman from his inner world. He raised his hand and waved it in the air, silently recording the image. Emolien's mouth twitched. He always knew that his wife was a cheat, but he never knew that his wife could cheat to this extent. Before he could quickly walk forward, he saw a ball rolling past him. It cried bitterly and grabbed the corner of Jojo's clothes. With a face full of grief and indignation, it howled, "Jojo, you finally finished leveling up." Qi Xianxian saw the person rolling over, and immediately laughed until she fell down. She slapped her thigh and laughed hysterically. "Little fatty, how did you become like this? Ha 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 ha." Damn! Little fatty had always been white and fat, like a glutinous rice dumpling. Who would have thought that after 3 days and 3 nights, after being inhumanely struck by the heavenly Tao, little fatty would become a big black glutinous rice dumpling? Ha 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 ha. Wife, can you stop laughing? The little fatty, Ko Hongwen, glanced resentfully at Qi Xianxian, who was still laughing and slapping her thigh in schadenfreude. This guy crawled up from the ground and raised his hand to brush his black hair. Dust and dirt fell from his head. His whole body looked like he had rolled in the mud, and dust flew everywhere. The background music suddenly turned into a group of women's ha 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 ha. Emolian quickly ran forward, her dark face full of grievance. Jojo. He had been down on his luck for the past 3 days. It was as if the heavenly Tao had gone mad. 1/3 of the lightning fire on the field was directed at him, rotten peach blossom, and Mi Yen. How could there be such a scam? They were able to reach this realm because they worked hard all their lives. Why couldn't the heavenly Tao just stand by and watch? Arbor held the baby in one hand and looked at Jojo's lotus sympathetically. Everyone saw her hook her little finger at Emolian, and Prince Emo went over curiously. Jojo stretched out a hand and patted the crown prince's head. He laughed sympathetically. "My heart really aches for you. Damn. Can you not laugh if your heart aches at night?" The capital's citizens, who were the center of the gossip, finally found out. The Eastern Palace's little imperial grandson was born with extraordinary talent and attracted the heavenly Tao's revenge. The lightning fire tribulation struck from the 5th to the 8th day of the new year. However, everyone knew that the little imperial grandson was fine. The ones who suffered were his father and his mother's group of unlucky relatives and friends. Uft. Chapter 5372. Forgive them for laughing rather unkindly. The development of the situation was inexplicably strange and ever-changing. The young royal grandson's glorious deeds had already spread to every corner on the night of the 8th day of the year. Everyone knew that the young royal grandson was truly a godly person with exceptional talent. That night, His Majesty's imperial edict was posted. In order to celebrate the birth of the young royal grandson, he issued a general amnesty and announced a series of corresponding amnesty regulations. The entire nation celebrated, and the world was in an uproar. That night, Prince Emo washed up and returned to his room, finally recovering the appearance of an elegant and refined gentleman. "Hubby, quickly come and look." When the little stoic saw him walk in, she hurriedly waved at him and exclaimed happily, "Look, look!" The baby opened his eyes. Prince Emo couldn't resist rolling his eyes. He thought, "Wife, I wouldn't be particularly surprised if you suddenly told me that our baby could fly. What heaven-defying things can't a divine realm level 10 infant do? Isn't it just opening his eyes? Look at how excited you are. Even though he thought this, Prince Emo still maintained the appearance of a loving father and leaned forward to glance at his son. Jojo was currently very happy and said while holding the little cub, "Eldest brother's family's little tiger won't be able to open his eyes for a long time. Mother said that once a child is born, he can't open his eyes and can't see too much light. Look, hubby, our baby can still open his eyes wide. How adorable. How can our son compare to other children?" Emo Lien was a bit speechless on the inside. Once our son is born, the commotion will be so great that heavenly law will punish the lower three heavens with lightning and fire. How can he be the same as other families? Emo Lien glanced over and saw that this boy was currently opening his pitch-black eyes. When he saw his old father glancing over, this boy actually glanced at him somewhat absent-mindedly. Prince Emo was instantly a bit amused and simply sat down next to his wife. He repeatedly complained, "Wife, wife, what are you doing?" The little stoic was currently looking at her son with her head lowered. After being abruptly called several times by him, she agreed without even turning her head. Emo Lien angrily tugged at her hand. "Jojo, ever since this kid was born, you haven't even looked at me properly." Arbor turned around and patted his head. "After you take a shower, you'll look even better." Emo Lien felt that when his wife patted his head, it was as if she was caressing a large dog. He didn't know if it was just his imagination. "Jojo, are you tired of carrying me? Let me do it." Emo Lien had just stretched out his hand when he felt a surge of energy in front of him. Without any hesitation, his hands were shaken off. It took him a lot of effort to stabilize himself and prevent himself from being shaken off the bed by his son. His handsome face stiffened. Prince Emo immediately complained, "Jojo, he hit me." Arbor, "Hubby, be a bit more mature. Don't get angry with our child." The little stoic's small face was taut as she reprimanded him sternly. Emo Lien looked at her, both amused and exasperated. He pursed his lips and accused, "Jojo, you're biased. Look at your husband. Because of this little brat, your husband was punished by the heavenly law for 3 days and 3 nights. It wasn't easy for me to recover. Yet you didn't even look at me." Arbor quickly turned around to glance at him and freed a hand to pat his cool, handsome face. Okay, you've worked hard. I'll definitely treat you well in the future," the little stoic said domineeringly. Emo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and he reached out to hug her. Chapter 5373. He even hugged the whimpering baby in his arms. Arbor was amused. He raised his hand and gently pushed his forehead. "Jojo's lotus, don't be angry with that old fellow Heavenly Tao." "Who's angry with it?" Emo Lien pursed her lips. "It's just a shameless old fellow. It wants to attack you. It wants to attack you and your son. It wants so much. But for whatever reason, this fellow just didn't dare to attack it. Therefore, he vented all his anger on the innocent passers-by. His pitiful shadow guards were struck by lightning and fire. They were like salted fish that didn't want to turn over." Arbor blinked. He raised his hand and heavily patted Emo Lien's thigh. He muttered, "That's why I said it must have a motive. It didn't dare to strike me now, but that doesn't mean it won't strike me in the future. Emo Lien, I must guard against it. I must guard against it." "Wife, your husband has a premonition. That old fellow Heavenly Tao just doesn't dare to strike you." "Wife, let's discuss something." "What is it, hubby? Please speak." Xiao Mu inched closer to him, and their heads moved closer together. Emo Lien held back her laughter. Her phoenix eyes curved as she stared at the small face close to her. "Chirp." He lowered his head and quickly kissed her. Then, he said with a serious face, "Wife, the next time you advance, can you inform your husband in advance? So that your husband can be mentally prepared." Arbor blinked and tilted his head back. "Husband, don't tell me you think that old fellow Heavenly Tao will strike you every time I advance?" As soon as she finished speaking, she saw her lotus nodding vigorously at her with a serious face. Sir Jojo couldn't help but be a little amused. He hugged Lotus' arm and laughed. "It won't, husband. Don't think too much. This time, it's just a coincidence. Maybe they're here for our children. Think about it. The child's innate talent is so miraculous. It's impossible not to strike him. As he spoke, Arbor suddenly raised his hand and stuffed the baby into Emolien's hands. This time, the little thing didn't push his father away. Perhaps it was because his father didn't take the initiative to hug him, but rather his mother stuffed him into his arms. Emolien couldn't help but laugh. He originally wanted to refute his wife's nonsense. How could there be such an incident? He felt that every time in the future, it would be so strange. He was unlucky that his wife had advanced in rank. He reckoned that he would not be able to avoid such a natural disaster. Suddenly, she felt that the child's blanket was a little warm. She raised her hand to touch it and looked at Jojo in confusion. The little stoic pinched her nose and crawled into the bed. I think the baby pooped. Go clean him up. Emolien's hand that was holding the child stiffened. The little stoic looked at him with her round and bright eyes. She directly pulled up the blanket and laid down. She was possessed by a drama queen. Jojo's Lotus. Jojo can only help you up to this point. Mother said that although my delivery went smoothly, and I'm different from normal people, I still need to rest a lot. For example, I have to wait on the baby all day long. You'll have to take care of the baby's poo. As she spoke, she looked at him very seriously. Your baby is a little hedgehog. Even the palace maids and eunuchs won't get close to him. But you can't let him sleep in a pile of dung. So husband, I'll be relying on you. The little stoic extended a fist from inside the blanket and made a gesture of her husband's hard work. Chapter 5374. Emolien hugged the baby and looked at her, both amused and exasperated. He felt like he had been tricked by his wife again. He lowered his head to look at the baby. Just as Jojo had said, the baby's eyes were wide open, and he was currently expressionlessly glaring at him. The crown prince poked his son's soft cheek lightly with his finger. The baby suddenly spat out a bubble and smacked his lips before continuing to glare at him. Jojo, this little imp is glaring at me again. The crown prince complained as he reached out to remove the baby's blanket. He picked up a dirty cotton cloth that was wrapped around the baby's, but in disdain. Sir Jojo simply couldn't bear to look at this man's clumsy actions and closed his eyes. Where do you plan to take that thing? She couldn't resist covering her face and shouting when she saw him quickly walk toward the window. Crown Prince Emo raised his hand and tossed that filthy diaper away. Arbor couldn't help but exclaim, "Supper is outside the window." Emolien, sorry brother. If I threw it on your head, it's because you didn't find a good place to hide. Arbor tossed aside the blanket and hastily ran down the bed. He saw that he had thrown the baby on the round table and was currently bending over to grab a clean diaper from the clothes rack next to him before messing around with the baby. The little stoic pursed her lips and directly raised her hand to smack her husband's head on his head. Hubby, are you stupid? You didn't even wash the baby and directly changed his diaper. Wife. Prince Emo looked at her aggrievedly. The little stoic expressionlessly glared at him and directed the crown prince from the side to have him pick up the baby and get some water to clean his small body. Later, she had him put the baby down, change into a clean diaper, and wrap the blanket properly. After this, fool followed Her Majesty the Queen's instructions and finished messing around. The young crown prince consort hugged her fragrant son and said with a yawn, "Husband, I'm sleepy. Find someone to clean up here. I'm going to sleep first." The crown prince looked a little aggrieved as he watched his wife hug the baby and go to sleep. For a moment, he felt as if the sky was falling. By the time he instructed the palace maids to clean up the room, he returned to the bed and took a look. The mother and son were already asleep. The miserable crown prince could only sneak onto the bed. He was afraid of waking up the mother and son, so he dawdled for a while before lying down. The only good thing about the little rascal was that he didn't cry or make a fuss that night. He didn't wake up in the middle of the night to torment his mother. When the crown prince got up early in the morning, he saw that the mother and son were still sleeping soundly. He didn't dare to disturb them, and only secretly planted a kiss on his wife's cheek. Early in the morning, the great emperor sent a verbal order to have a meeting in the study. When she reached the entrance of the Eastern Palace, She saw the Empress's carriage stop. When the Crown Prince saw his mother, he hurriedly walked forward and warmly greeted his mother. "Mother, why are you here so early?" the Empress said expressionlessly. "Oh, I'm not looking for you. I'm here to see my daughter-in-law and grandson. If you have something to do, then go do it. There's no need to greet me here." The Crown Prince felt a little hurt and looked at the Empress plaintively. Why did he feel that the moment Emo Bao was born, his status in the family seemed to have suddenly plummeted rapidly? The two guards following behind him silently lowered their heads and snickered. Their shoulders couldn't help but tremble slightly. His Highness the Crown Prince was really a little unlucky and miserable recently. Not to mention that he took the blame for his son and endured the heavenly punishment for 3 days and 3 nights. Now he had just said a sentence to the Empress, and the Empress disliked him for blocking the way. She felt that he was in the way and was affecting her from seeing her grandson. Chapter 5375. Crown Prince Emo glanced resentfully at Her Excellency Mother before pitifully leaving. Queen Bai looked back at him with confusion. Her son looked so pitiful. Those who didn't know would think that someone had mistreated the Crown Prince. An old nanny beside Queen Bai held her arm and couldn't help but laugh. "Queen, you should pay attention to His Highness. After all, His Highness blocked the thunder and fire tribulation for the little prince for 3 days and 3 nights. Bai Wuxia couldn't help but laugh when she thought of this. Everyone on the streets was talking about this. They even praised the Crown Prince's fatherly heart for blocking the thunder and fire tribulation for the little prince for 3 days and 3 nights without hesitation. Puff God knows what choice the Crown Prince had. The thunder and fire tribulation didn't dare to hit Jojo or her little grandson. It vented all its anger on the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince was so unlucky. He didn't want to be like this. Master Silver, Master Guangguang strode over the tall threshold with his short legs. His eyes shone with a watery light. He swayed his small body and ran over to the bed. Then he jumped onto the bed and started to climb up and roll on it. Master Silver, Master Silver, Master Silver. After kicking himself 3 times, Sir Guangguang finally managed to kick himself onto the bed. When he looked up, he saw Qiao Mu gazing at him expressionlessly. "Woman, I'm here to see my little Master Silver." Arbor didn't say anything. She raised her hand and knocked on his bald head. "Call me Auntie." Lord Guangguang covered his head and pursed his lips. He rolled to the front of the blanket and called out in surprise, "Woman Auntie." Seeing that Arbor was going to knock his big head again, Master Guangguang had no choice but to submit to evil. He immediately changed his words. "Auntie, look. My little Master Silver is so pretty." Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. The little baby's face was still wrinkled. Perhaps Master Guangguang's eyesight wasn't good. She didn't know where he looked pretty. However, Baby Mo's eyes were black like hers. Indeed, it was quite beautiful. "Guangguang, who do you think his eyes resemble?" "Just like you," Lord Guangguang hurriedly said flatteringly. Arbor was very satisfied. He nodded and said seriously, "Not bad. His eyes look so much like mine." As expected of my son, Jojo was overjoyed. "Women," Lord Guangguang blurted out, but quickly corrected himself. "Auntie, can I play with Master Silver for a while?" "No." Little Monkey's voice was full of disapproval. Guangguang turned his head and saw the little monkey and the bald little monk lying on the side of the bed. At this moment, they were looking at him. "What right do you have to say no? This is my little master." Without saying a word, the little monkey raised his hand and slapped Lord Guangguang's little butt heavily. "You have no manners and don't know the rules. Do you know who I am?" Guangguang looked at her in confusion and stammered. Aren't you a little monkey? Who are you to call me little monkey?" The little monkey pulled a long face and slapped Guangguang's little butt angrily again. Lord Guangguang's face flushed red. He was so angry that his hair was about to stand up. You what?" The little monkey threw away his finger that was pointing around. "You have to call me Auntie in the future." "What?" Lord Guangguang was so angry that he almost fainted. He worked overtime too late today and didn't have much energy. He should sleep first. Tuesday to Saturday. Chapter 5376. Woman. Lord Guangguang tugged on Arbor's clothes and shook it forcefully. Aren't you going to control her? My hair is about to stand on end because of her anger. After saying that, the little monk climbed to his side and sat on the bed obediently. He raised his hand and touched Lord Guangguang's hairless head. You don't have hair. Arbor couldn't hold back the amusement in his heart, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. The little monkey nodded and hurriedly added, I think you won't be able to grow hair in this lifetime, so don't have extravagant hopes. The little monk patted Lord Guangguang's head comfortingly. Don't be afraid, there are benefits to not having hair. You don't have to wash your hair if you don't have hair. Just wipe it with a rag at any time. Kai Chi, who was passing tea to Arbor, couldn't help but burst into laughter when she heard that. These three little radishes couldn't help but bicker when they were together. It was really too fun to watch. The little monkey snorted and proudly lifted his little chin, asking in all seriousness, Hang, what do you call this little sister? Lord Guangguang glanced at Arbor and silently swallowed the word woman back. He said with an unclear and unwilling expression, Call me aunt. The little monkey's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, See, you call my little sister aunt. What does this mean? Doesn't this mean that in terms of seniority, I am your little aunt? Lord Guangguang almost fainted from his fallacious reasoning. He glared at the little monkey and shouted angrily, You little brat. You actually dared to take advantage of Lord Guangguang. This fellow was so angry that his mouth couldn't even move properly. He stuttered for a long time before he finished his sentence. The little monkey's eyes curved as he glanced at him. So what if I took advantage of you? Who asked you to be so stupid? Besides, don't my words make sense? It's always like this. You call my little sister aunt. Then aren't you my little nephew? Guangguang, now you know what you should call me, right? Guangguang was so angry that he didn't want to bother with her. So he simply turned his face to look at his little master. With one look, he discovered that his little master was awake. Two big, black eyes were staring at him at this moment. Her small diamond-shaped mouth was slightly tilted up, and her porcelain-white face was glowing. She looked extremely beautiful. The glutinous rice balls were pink and fluffy. This was too much fun. Lord Guangguang called out Little Dumpling, and Arbor froze for a moment. His memory seemed to have been taken back to the heavenly snow region. Thinking back to that time, a certain scammer had also called her Little Dumpling. She then looked at her son, who was a little thing with a round head. It was indeed quite suitable to call him Little Dumpling. So she nodded and said, All right, I'll call him Little Dumpling from now on. Lord Guangguang seemed very happy. Who would have thought that the name he had given to his master would be adopted by Sir Jojo? Thinking about it this way, he felt that he was quite talented. Master Guangguang glanced at Arbor with a smile. Auntie, can't I play with little master for a while? Arbor looked over and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She saw that her son, who had a pair of big black grape-like eyes just now, had long fallen asleep. This little fellow's eyes were closed, and he was sleeping there quietly. The few of them looked at each other, not knowing when this fellow had fallen asleep. But the child had just been born, and her mother had reminded her before that the child would definitely be more sleepy in the early stages. So she didn't have to be nervous and so on. Chapter 5377. She reached out to poke the child's soft forehead, and shook her head at Guangguang. Look, Xiao Tuanzi is asleep now. Let him sleep for a while. In the past 2 days, he had been advancing and going through tribulations. He was still so young. It was quite torturous. Since Xiao Tuanzi was asleep now, let him have a good sleep. The little guy could probably consolidate his realm in his sleep. Xiaomu felt that she was indulging in the wildest of fantasies. So she hastily shook her head and cast aside this unrealistic thought. Now that she had a child, she could understand how her mother felt when she had her. She didn't want her child to be rich or talented. She only wanted her child to be safe and sound. Guangguang didn't insist on disturbing Xiao Tuanzi. She nodded and said sensibly, All right then. Let the little master have a good rest. Only with a good rest can he grow up quickly. In the future, Master Guangguang will definitely accompany the little master to gain experience. Arbor's lips curved slightly. She was in a good mood. In the future, she would also bring the child out to gain experience. Whether it was the Phoenix Forest in the southernmost part, the Ice Sky Snow region in the northernmost part, or the vast and boundless sea of forgetfulness, the family of three would have fun wherever they went. Ever since Qingzhou was taken down by Tianyin, the situation in the three states became more and more tense. The great emperor gathered the crown prince and his men, and held several meetings to make arrangements. However, after the fall of Qingzhou, several small countries around it were in a precarious situation. They frequently sent distress signals to Shenzhou. The crown prince was so busy that his feet barely touched the ground. He didn't even come back for lunch. Occasionally he would come back, but every time he came and went in a hurry. Arbor felt sorry for him. Fortunately, she heard that the second young master of the Xie family had also returned to the capital. With this person helping the crown prince, it could reduce his burden. Recently, the great emperor looked at the crown prince with a gaze that said, "I'm old. It's time to hand over this burden to you." She felt that in the near future, this unreliable father was very likely to give up his responsibilities to the crown prince. Arbor gently put down the cup in her hand and patted her son, who was still sleeping soundly under the blanket. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside the door. Eunuch Chen jogged in and hurriedly bowed. Crown Princess, Princess Consort Zheng entered the palace to pay respects to Her Majesty the Empress. She then made a detour to the Eastern Palace, saying that she wanted to personally congratulate the Crown Princess. The little Crown Princess glanced at the door indifferently. She could vaguely see a few figures moving around. Since she was entering the palace to pay respects to the Empress, it meant that this Princess Consort Zheng had received her mother's permission to enter the palace today. Since that was the case, Jojo naturally could not disregard his mother. She nodded and said indifferently, "Please come in." Princess Consort Zheng followed Eunuch Chen in with a cautious expression. The moment she entered, she bowed towards the young crown princess. "Greetings to the crown princess." His attitude was respectful, and he did not dare to slight her in the slightest. The little stoic nodded, and had someone come forward to help her up. Her gaze landed on Su Shitao behind her, and she raised her brows in surprise. Although she didn't have a gossipy heart, she had heard a lot of gossip from Caiqi and the others. She was rather familiar with the gossipy family affairs of the Prince Zheng's estate. She had always heard that Princess Consort Zheng did not get along with this Miss Su Shitao. Wasn't it a bit abnormal for her to bring her into the palace today? Chapter 5378. Arbor couldn't help but take a few more glances at Su Shitao. Princess Tao, who was usually very aggressive, was actually very obedient today. Not only did she come forward with Princess Consort Zheng and respectfully bow to the young crown princess, but she even raised her head and smiled at Arbor with a gentle and well-mannered expression. Arbor's hand trembled, and she lost her grip on the teacup. The hot tea spilled out just like that. The tea stained Su Shitao's skirt. If it were any other time, this Princess Tao would have jumped up in anger and scolded her while pointing at her. It was even very likely that she would have punched her directly. However, it was very strange today. Not only did this Princess Tao not blame her, but she even asked for her forgiveness in fear and trepidation. She kept saying that it was because of her clumsy legs that she didn't dodge in time, which led to such a disaster. Xiaomu was simply stupefied, and she hastily sized up Su Shitao. She pointed at her very seriously and turned to ask Princess Consort Zheng, "What's wrong with her?" She had changed her mind so quickly that she was at a loss for what to do. Could it be that Prince Zheng had taught this Princess Tao a lesson in private? That was probably not very likely. From what she saw, Prince Zheng doted on his only sister very much. He probably wouldn't lay a finger on her. Princess Consort Zheng's gaze was also somewhat secretive. She followed the young crown princess's gaze and sized up Su Shitao. Princess Consort Zheng felt that this younger sister of hers seemed to have taken the wrong medicine today. Her tone was unbelievably gentle. However, she had never interacted with this person, so she couldn't be bothered to care about what tricks this younger sister of hers was up to. If Prince Zheng hadn't forced her to bring Su Shitao into the palace to broaden her horizons, She definitely wouldn't have brought such an uncertain factor into the palace to pay her respects. At this thought, Princess Consort Jung turned to the young crown princess and said with a smile, "Crown Princess, congratulations. I heard that the Emperor's little grandson encountered the heavenly fire lightning tribulation when he was born. He must have outstanding talent, surpassing ordinary people." "That's right, Crown Princess. Congratulations," Su Shitao also said. He quickly took 2 steps forward and approached the bed. She couldn't help but lift the thin and soft brocade blanket that covered the little dumpling. Not only is the young prince different from ordinary people, but he is also different from ordinary people. In my opinion, the crown princess is also very different from ordinary people, Su Shitao said with a smile. Otherwise, how could the crown princess be able to get up and walk normally a few days after the child was born? Princess Consort Jing's eyes flickered slightly, but she did not stop Su Shitao from continuing. "I've heard people say that the little prince is quite an anomaly. In 1 day, he would be able to open his eyes. In 2 days he would be able to call for his mother. And in 3 days he would be able to run. Crown Princess, is it true? Tower, don't talk nonsense." Princess Consort Jung symbolically reprimanded Su Shitao, allowing Su Shitao to blabber on endlessly. The young crown princess pressed down on Su Shitao's action of lifting the blanket, and her expression instantly darkened. Now that he was close, a pungent fragrance from Su Shitao's body assailed his nostrils, causing Arbor to frown uncontrollably. Who said that this Su Shitao's personality changed? It didn't change at all. It was just that his original threatening gestures had been disguised as today's acrimony. Su Shitao wasn't alarmed when the young crown princess pressed down on his hand. He merely glanced indifferently at the little stoic. Looking at her tense little face, he smiled faintly and leaned closer. Chapter 5379. Crown Princess, did you know? I'm not spouting nonsense. Right now, the entire capital is secretly spreading the rumor that the young imperial grandson is a demon fetus. Think about it. A baby that can open his eyes in 1 day, call out for his mother in 2 days, and run on the ground in 3 days. If he's not a demon fetus, then what is he? You're spouting nonsense. Kai Chi was so anxious that her eyes were red. She couldn't help but berate angrily. How can our young imperial grandson be so resourceful? It's not what you're saying at all. The young imperial grandson couldn't be any more normal. For the past few days, he had been sleeping like an ordinary child. He had been sleeping the entire time. When he opened his eyes, he would grumble about eating and drinking. After eating, he would sleep. It was just that simple. Why hadn't she heard the rumor that there was a demon fetus spreading around the capital? It must be this Su Shitao who used these words to anger their crown princess. Kai Chi was both anxious and furious. She hurriedly turned to the young crown princess and said, "Crown Princess, don't listen to her nonsense. This servant sees that her words are evasive and untruthful. She must be lying to you." The young crown princess nodded. She pulled back her hand and slapped the approaching Su Shitao. She sneered in a low voice. "Is this crown princess such a gullible person in your eyes?" Su Shitao cried out in alarm. She flipped over and sat on the ground. She hastily crawled a few steps back and retreated several feet away from the arbor. Su Shitao suppressed a trace of fury in her eyes. If she hadn't done her utmost to control her anger, she would have exploded long ago. She was simply too envious of this crown princess. Actually, as soon as she entered the Eastern Palace, Su Shitao's eyes were dazzled by the magnificent decorations and jealousy. Not to mention, once she entered the palace, she had to lower herself to be a concubine everywhere. Now, she even had to follow Princess Consort Jung and pay respects to this young crown prince consort. This made her feel uncomfortable all over and extremely sullen all over. The demon fetus that she had blurted out wasn't something that she had made up without any evidence. Indeed, there was a strange rumor spreading in the imperial capital. She wasn't the one who spread it. She had only said it out of the goodness of her heart for the crown princess to hear. Who would have thought that she would be so unreasonable and give her such a heavy slap in the face? This damn Xiaomu. Su Shitao secretly gritted her teeth and took a deep breath, trying her best to suppress her anger. Arbor glared at her, and immediately became alert. There must be something fishy going on. According to what she knew about Princess Tao, she was not a patient person. There was definitely something wrong with her current appearance. Arbor reached out and took the child into his arms. With a solemn expression, he took the child's pulse and looked coldly at Sushi Tao. Men, the little crown princess said coldly, capture her and search her. Sushi Tao's gaze contracted, and she shouted repeatedly, "What are you doing? Crown princess, you can't treat me like this without distinguishing right from wrong just because of your status." The little stoic had never been someone who liked to waste words with others. Since she ordered people to capture her, they would be captured. Why was there so much nonsense? With a look, several palace servants around them hastily rushed forward and restrained the struggling Sushi Tao in a flurry of moves. Sushi Tao flew into a rage and shouted in an abnormally shrill voice, "What are you doing? Crown princess, what do you want to search?" "Noisy," the little crown princess complained in a low voice with a cold expression. "Wait." Chapter 5380. Kaichi immediately took out a dirty rag and stuffed it into Sushi Tao's mouth. The latter widened her eyes in disbelief and glared hatefully at Kaichi. Her entire face flushed red. It was as if she was suffering an enormous grievance. Tears welled up in Sushi Tao's eyes and didn't fall for a long time. At the young crown princess's command, those junior royal maids from the Eastern Palace immediately swarmed forward and pinned Sushi Tao down. They didn't show any mercy to the fairer sex and lifted her clothes to search her body. They searched her from head to toe, inside and out, and placed all the bottles and jars they found in front of the young crown princess. The little stoic's small face was cold as she reached out to take one of the porcelain bottles. She pressed the bottle's opening and shook it vigorously. "Black centipede." She expressionlessly spat out these 3 words. She then took another porcelain bottle and shook it coldly, saying, "Poisonous scorpion." 7 pollen. Sushi Tao's pupils contracted and dilated as he watched this expressionless young crown princess identify the items inside the bottles one by one. A bad premonition flitted through his heart. "You prepared more than a dozen types of poisonous insects, poisonous substances, and poisonous powders, and carried them all on you in order to wait for an opportunity to use these things to harm my son." The little stoic's lips tugged into an icy curve. Kaichi couldn't help but shudder slightly when she saw this. When the crown princess said this, her eyes coldly glared at Sushi Tao. The iciness and callousness in the depths of her eyes engulfed everything, as if she could tear Sushi Tao to shreds in the next instant. Sushi Tao widened her eyes in horror and spat out the dirty rag in her mouth with all her might. She feigned ignorance and asked, "How can you malign me like this? What proof do you have that I brought these things to harm the young imperial grandson? Can't I use them for self-defense?" "The fragrance on your body." Arbor gazed at her coldly. "There's a big problem." "There, what problem?" Arbor sent a look to Kaichi and Kaishio. The two immediately understood and walked up apathetically, pressing Sushi Tao onto the gold-threaded wooden table next to them. "Ah!" Sushi Tao let out a short scream, and then his eyes widened in fear and anger. With an expression of disbelief, he stared at the open bottle in Kaichi's hand. The powder in the bottle was poured into her mouth. The fine powder was choked by the wind. Sushi Tao couldn't help but cough and spit out a small mouthful of powder. Arbor threw a pill to Kaichi and Kaishio, hinting them to take it as soon as possible. Then, she looked coldly at Sushi Tao. Her eyes were as cold as ice in the abyss, without the slightest hint of warmth. "Sushi Tao," Arbor coldly said to her, "today, even if the Daluo Immortal is here, no one will be able to save your life." Only now did Princess Consort Zheng return to her senses. She hurriedly took 2 steps forward and said, Crown Princess, what's going on? Tao has always been disrespectful to the Crown Princess, so it's only right for you to punish her. But can you not implicate her family?" Sushi Tao's anger was stifled in her chest. It was very unbearable to hold it in. "Sister-in-law, you actually said that about me? You didn't plead for mercy for me and find a way out for me. But you actually kicked me to death?" Princess Consort Zheng looked as if she expected better from Sushi Tao and coldly glanced at her. Chapter 5381. 5. 1133-inch Tao. Don't blame me for being merciless. I've already reminded you many times. His Highness also told you not to do stupid things again. But did you listen to my advice? Princess Consort Zheng sighed and said, I followed His Highness's orders today to bring you into the palace. I didn't expect that something like this would happen. This consort is also about to be too ashamed to see people. How could you do such a muddle-headed thing, Tao? Princess Consort Zheng sighed with a long sigh. However, Arbor glanced at her coldly. Princess Consort Zheng, do you know what these dozen types of poisonous insects in powder are for? Princess Consort Zheng couldn't help but be taken aback. Then, she hurriedly shook her head in fear and trepidation. Crown Princess, don't worry. I don't know anything about these poisonous insects in powder that Tower plays with. The young Crown Princess smiled coldly at her. Go call Fairy Yellowhe over. Princess Consort Daching. Just sit here for a while. I want to find a more professional person to properly explain to Princess Consort. Princess Consort Jing's palms were clammy with cold sweat. For some reason, she inwardly felt that it seemed like the situation was taking a sharp turn for the worse, inexplicably developing in a terrifying direction. At this time, Su Shitao, who had choked on a mouthful of poisonous powder, was glaring hatefully at Arbor, as if she could glare her to death. Fairy Yellowhe arrived very quickly. Within a few minutes, she rushed to the young Crown Princess's bedchamber with several capable assistants. When she heard that the young Crown Princess had been attacked with poisonous insects and powder, Yellowhe ran in with a cold expression, shouting along the way, Who dares to attack Jojo? It's you. Yellowhe's eyes abruptly glared at Su Shitao, who was huddled by the door, sizing her up. Yellowhe, take a look at the things on the table. Fairy Yellowhe nodded and quickly ran forward. One by one, she picked them up and carefully studied them. Her expression slowly turned grave. She looked back at Arbor hesitantly. Arbor was sitting on the edge of the bed with her son in her arms. When she saw Huang He turn his head and glance at her, she nodded at him. Huang He immediately understood. He stood beside the table and skillfully mixed the contents of the bottles and jars on the table. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Fairy Huang, he had carefully mixed the poison powder of the poisonous insects into a black medicinal liquid. The medicinal liquid swayed back and forth in a transparent container. It looked like a ball of flowing ink, extremely dark. Fairy Yellow Crane held the bottle of medicinal liquid and walked step by step towards the pale-faced Princess Consort Zheng and Su Shitao. Princess Consort Zheng's voice trembled as she asked, What is this? Does Princess Consort not know? Arbor looked at Princess Consort Zheng and said coldly, This is the source of this world's mass production of corpse puppets. Commonly known as the basic mutated medicinal liquid, it's not as powerful as the mutated pill, but if you frequently take this basic mutated medicinal liquid, the transformation of the body is also extraordinary. Princess Consort Zheng stood there dumbstruck. She then shook her head repeatedly and muttered to herself in a daze. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Was the Crown Princess joking? How could the miss of the Prince Zheng estate carry the poisonous insects and powder used to make the basic mutated medicinal liquid with her? All of this must have been planted by the young Crown Princess, right? The Prince Zheng estate definitely could not take the blame for this. Too sleepy, I'm falling asleep. Chapter 5382. Impossible. Princess Consort Zheng's voice trembled slightly as she abruptly turned to glare at Su Shitao. The flames of rage that shot out from those eyes seemed like sharp arrows that had been poisoned, and they could annihilate Su Shitao in a matter of minutes. Su Shitao shuddered in fright from Princess Consort Zheng's reaction, and he hurriedly explained, Sister-in-law, you trust an outsider and not your own people? Princess Consort Zheng naturally didn't trust Su Shitao at all. Her husband's younger sister kept lowering her own limits almost every day. You would never know what kind of even more terrifying and outrageous things this woman could do. Sister-in-law, I really don't know what these things are. Before Su Shitao could refute, Princess Consort Zheng gave him a big slap across the face, directly slapping his face to the side. I warned His Highness before that if he doesn't restrain you, the entire Prince Zheng estate will fall at your hands sooner or later. He didn't listen to me. See now, retribution has come. What kind of father raises what kind of children? Princess Consort Zheng's eyes burst with a cold light brimming with hatred and anger. With such a selfish father, you won't be any better as a daughter. Su Shitao was so angry that his entire body trembled. He covered his face with one hand and pointed at Princess Consort Zheng with the other. You actually dared to hit me. Princess Consort Zheng took several steps forward and backhanded another heavy slap, directly landing on the other side of Su Shitao's face. Su Shitao's body swayed from side to side from Princess Consort Zheng's slap, and he spun half a circle backward before falling head first onto the ground. Princess Consort Zheng, if you want to teach someone a lesson, then drag him out and teach him a lesson. Don't dirty this crown princess room. Arbor held the baby with one hand and looked at Princess Consort Zheng and Su Shitao with extremely cold eyes, her voice filled with boundless iciness. The vassal king consort of Zheng, Shi Yongyan's heart trembled, and she hastily turned around to give Qiaomu a curtsy. She maintained her composure. Crown Prince Consort, please forgive this concubine for being impolite. Fairy Yellow Crane threw the basic mutated potion on the table and turned to look at Su Shitao. She directly questioned, "You brought these things here because you were thinking about how to harm people, right?" It was a pity that this person was trying to display his slight skill in front of Jojo. He was simply asking for humiliation. "Don't slander me." Su Shitao bit his lips and shouted angrily. I don't know what these things are. It's just that before I left today, I met an old woman in the courtyard who was fiddling with these medicine bottles. Out of curiosity, I walked over and asked about it. Now that she thought about it, all of this must have been set up by someone else. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that she would bump into such a gloomy old woman just as she was about to leave the house? Furthermore, she would be able to learn from her that no matter which poison was used, just a little bit would be enough to take the lives of that mother and son pair. Needless to say, she hated that bitch so much that she wanted to bite her flesh and swallow her blood. However, Su Shitao knew very well that she was probably as far away from Arbor as 1,000 or 10,000 mountains. She could only look up to that person for the rest of her life. Previously, she had been beaten for nothing and scolded for nothing. Especially now, that bitch actually gave birth to a little imperial grandson so smoothly. In his joy, the emperor even pardoned the world. It was clear how much he doted on his little imperial grandson. This bitch's mother rose because of her son. In the future, no one would be able to shake her position. Chapter 5383. Thinking of this, Su Shitao couldn't help but gnash her teeth in hatred. Could it be that the woman in front of her was someone she couldn't catch up to even if she tried? Suddenly, a burst of pain came from the palm of her hand, causing her to snap back to her senses from her myriad of thoughts. Looking down, she realized that she was being forced to kneel on the ground and was being taught a lesson with a long ruler. Su Shitao struggled with all her might, her voice full of fear as she asked, You, what are you doing? Miss Su, since you don't know the rules, then let us servants properly teach you what rules and etiquette are. Kai Chi and Kai Xiu's faces were cold as they gave a meaningful glance to the few palace maids beside them. Everyone hurriedly held her down firmly on the ground. Saichi held the ruler in her hand and slammed it heavily into Su Shitao's palm, causing her to cry for her father and mother. Su Shitao, Xiaomu retorted coldly, I've tolerated you again and again. Could it be that you think that this crown prince consort has an extremely good temper and will allow you to jump up and down as you please? Speaking of which, it's really my tolerance that harmed you. You didn't repent and instead went from bad to worse. Now you dare to openly lay your hands on the little imperial grandson. I didn't. Su Shitao jumped in fright and quickly raised her head, glaring at Arbor with a pair of angry eyes. You wronged me. Even if she died, she would never admit that she did have the intention to harm others. She really wanted to take advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention and it would be best if she could get rid of that hateful mother and son. In particular, she knew that Imperial Brother's little white flower concubine was very weak after giving birth. She couldn't get out of bed at all, nor could she make any big movements. She even sounded like she was about to stop breathing when she shouted. After Arbor gave birth to the child, she would definitely need to recuperate, so she might not be able to take precautions. As long as she was given a chance, the effect would definitely be very good. Unfortunately, Su Shitao's wishful thinking had been seen through before he could even make a move. Everything he hid in his possession had been found out and became evidence of his crimes. Su Shitao, this crown prince consort is fed up with you. Xiao Mu gazed at her coldly as she spoke dryly. Just these words frightened Su Shitao greatly. His entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly as he cried out in a stern voice. I didn't. No. I was also deceived by those villains. I don't know what kind of improved medicine can be made from these things. I don't know. What are you doing? With a terrified expression, Su Shitao looked at the two bodyguards who had grabbed her arms. Let go of me. Let go of me. Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Su Shitao screamed and roared. Do you want to leave me to die? Think about my big brother. If my big brother knew that you didn't save me when I was dying and watched me die, he wouldn't have done anything. I can't guarantee that you won't have a good time. Princess Consort Zheng looked at her with a complicated gaze and sighed. I will personally explain this matter to His Highness. Now that the entire Prince Zheng's estate had been inexplicably implicated by her, the young crown princess was already giving face to Her Majesty the Empress by not attacking their Prince Zheng's estate at the first opportunity. No matter what, Prince Zheng was still Her Majesty the Empress' adopted son. Even if he had committed all kinds of evil and needed to be punished, Her Majesty had to personally punish him. This was what the young crown princess thought in her heart. She coldly glanced at the shouting Su Shitao. Chapter 5384. She raised her small hand and waved it slightly. Without another word, the two guards dragged Su Shitao out of the courtyard. Su Shitao was completely flustered. She struggled and shouted. What are you doing? Arbor. What are you trying to do? I am King Jing's younger sister. I'm His Highness's younger sister. You can't treat me like this. You can't, Su Shitao, who was being dragged by two guards, staggered and almost fell down. When she finally managed to steady herself, a trace of panic and fear flashed through Su Shitao's eyes. Her original haughty demeanor instantly vanished without a trace. She shouted to Arbor in a panic. Crown Princess, please forgive me. I really didn't intentionally take out those medicine bottles to harm people. I was just a little playful. Just what? She just wanted to take advantage of the young crown princess's illness and take her life. She even wanted to harm the newborn child, didn't she? Princess Consort Zheng swept a careless glance at Su Shitao. She was crying so hard right now that she looked like a tearful person. She no longer had her usual spoiled and willful appearance. If she had known this would happen, why did she do it in the first place? Su Shitao's stupidity caught her off guard. Princess Consort Zheng shook her head weakly. She clenched her handkerchief tightly in her hand, pondering how to cleanly remove the entire King Zheng estate from this muddy water. Subsequently, she realized that it was really very difficult to cleanly remove the entire King Zheng estate from top to bottom. After all, this matter involved the crown princess and His Highness the young imperial grandson. It was not so easy to resolve. Crown Princess. Princess Consort Zheng swallowed and braced herself to ask, May I know where the crown princess ordered people to take Tao? The young crown princess glanced at her indifferently. Holding the little dumpling in her arms, she said coldly, Su Shitao has committed treason against her superiors. This crown princess has ordered people to imprison her in the Ministry of Justice's prison to await trial. Do you have any objections? Princess Consort Zheng's entire body turned cold. She shook her head repeatedly and took a few steps back. She bowed and said, Crown Princess, please allow this concubine to take her leave first. The little crown princess didn't say anything and only glanced at her coldly. Why is Princess Consort Zheng in such a hurry? A cold voice sounded from the doorway. Princess Consort Zheng felt a chill run down her spine. She couldn't help but stiffen her neck as she turned around in a daze. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, who was dressed in a luxurious black robe and had his hair tied up in a crown, strode over the threshold with a cold and handsome face that would not melt even after 1,000 years. He walked towards the young crown princess. "We were just about to send someone to your King Zheng estate. Have someone send Princess Consort Zheng off on the way." Princess Consort Zheng's expression changed in shock. She couldn't stop trembling as she shouted, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, the King Zheng estate has been wrongly accused. Ever since my younger sister Su Shitao was brought into the estate, her behavior has been unruly and condescending. She's completely disobedient. This concubine is indeed at fault for not supervising her strictly. But it's not to the extent that the entire King Zheng estate should lose their lives because of her stupidity." Prince Emo sneered and didn't say much to her. He directly pointed at Xiao Yi and Yuba behind him. The two nodded in understanding and turned to bow respectfully to Princess Consort Zheng after receiving the order. "Please, Princess Consort." Princess Consort Zheng's emotions were all over the place. She staggered and hurriedly reached out to grab the door frame. Chapter 5385. Her heart was in turmoil as she turned back to look at the crown prince in horror. Her fingers gripped the door frame tightly, preventing her from falling to the ground. So His Highness was already so dissatisfied with the Zheng household. Did he not want to tolerate the Zheng household for even a second after this? A trace of bitterness flashed across Princess Consort Zheng's lips. Seeing that the crown prince and his wife were ignoring them, she hurriedly turned and left. A cold glint flashed across the crown prince's eyes. He glanced in the direction Princess Consort Zheng left and shook his head. "It's rare for the Sher family to have a sensible person. What a pity." Arbor pursed her lips and stuffed the little dumpling into Emolien's arms. Just now that woman had another fragrance on her. I smelled it like the work of Madame Goen. The crown prince's grip on his wife's hand tightened slightly, and a trace of sternness flashed across his eyes. "You mean that old Madame Goen is restless again?" Ever since Du Chuanjiang's trip, Goen had been much more well-behaved and would no longer cause trouble for the little crown princess for no reason. Why was she reverting to her old ways now? Well, Goen was relying on the protection of her grandfather in Glorious City. Every day, Goen used the excuse of visiting her sisters to reminisce with the Empress. This had actually helped her restore her good reputation. Thinking of this, a cold glint flashed across the crown prince's eyes. Since that idiot Goen didn't want to live comfortably, then he would make her busy in the future. Seeing his cold expression, Arbor couldn't help but tug at his hand. "I just felt that the powder on Su Shitao's body was somewhat familiar. It might not be Madame Goen." She couldn't be bothered to smell the thick smell of low-quality powder. "This matter is still rather strange." Arbor held Emolien's hand and said softly, "Looking at Su Shitao's stupid appearance, it really seems like she was set up by someone. She just didn't know who set her up." Emolien, who only wanted results and couldn't be bothered to ask about the process, curled her lips and said, "Who cares? In any case, we have both witnesses and material evidence now. Su Shitao's poisonous powder and insects can be used to concoct basic mutated medicinal liquid. It can be seen that the entire Prince Zheng's mansion is closely related to heavenly fate. The order he had given to Yuba and Xiao Yi was to capture everyone in King Zheng's residence and kill anyone who resisted. Well, don't ask why he was so cruel. The question was that they should never have tried to harm his wife. This matter had already touched his deepest bottom line. If he could tolerate it, what else could he tolerate? "Won't this make things difficult for Mother?" Jojo asked softly as he glanced at his husband. "What's so difficult about it?" Emolien snorted. "You have to take responsibility for your mistakes. Brother King Zheng has let down his mother's trust in him, and let down his mother's painstaking efforts. I want him to pay the price." Arbor sighed. He knew that this guy was stubborn, and it was useless to persuade him. Moreover, it was Su Shitao who wanted to scheme against them. Emolien would definitely be unable to tolerate it. "I've asked someone to throw Su Shitao into the Ministry of Justice's prison temporarily. Emo Lien frowned slightly and held the little guy's hand. There's no need to worry so much. Leave the rest to me to deal with. You still need to recuperate more recently. Let me be at ease, all right? Arbor nodded reluctantly and muttered, I'm very curious now. Who on earth is the one who set up King Zheng's mansion? Catch up on 2 chapters after waking up. Chapter 5386. Emo Shikong, the Prince of Zheng, angrily stepped through the doorway and saw the man leisurely drinking tea in the hall. This person was dressed in green, his hair like a waterfall, his face like jade, and his figure slender. At this moment, he was sitting in the center of the hall, holding the tea in his hand, and casually looking up at him. The anger in Emo Shikong's heart surged out. He quickly walked to the front of this person, and couldn't help but roar with a trembling voice. Was it you? Was it you? The scheme you set up made Maid Tower walk into it herself. He Prince Zheng. Are you angry out of humiliation? A cold laugh came from behind him. Emo Shikong's body trembled slightly, and he quickly turned to look at the person who came. He saw a handsome man with a slight smile on his lips step through the door, waving the folding fan in his hand, and smiling politely at him. Emo Shikong was very clear that he didn't know this person in front of him. He abruptly turned to glare at the man sitting there drinking tea, and angrily asked with a trembling voice, Second young master. What do you mean? Who is this young master? Qin Xian faintly glanced at him, and said with a sneer, Why are you in such a hurry? Young Master Qin, the fire didn't reach you, so you naturally aren't in a hurry. Emo Shikong gnashed his teeth in hatred, and he angrily rebuked while pointing at the door. Do you know that they've come knocking on our door? The Crown Prince's people are holding my Wangfei, and are knocking on our door. Emo Shikong sternly shouted, Second young master, what did you do? Oh, young Master Omega Kotoku faintly glanced at Emo Shikong, seemingly glancing at his flustered and exasperated expression. His expression was still very indifferent as he asked, Emo Lien brought people to surround the Prince of Zheng's residence? Emo Shikong was so angry that his soul was about to ascend to the heavens. Seeing his unperturbed appearance, he could only swallow his anger, stifling his anger, and tried to use a calm voice to say, he didn't come. He only sent 2 subordinates. Then what are you afraid of? Omega Kotoku looked at Emo Shikong contemptuously. You're sitting in this position. Don't tell me you're afraid of a few subordinates of the Crown Prince party? Then why do you still think that the prince is plotting something big? You should rest early. Emo Shikong was fuming. Second young master. This is the current master of the River of Forgetfulness, Long Yun, clan leader Long. Emo Shikong looked at Mr. Long in surprise. He saw Mr. Long waving the fan in his hand and looking at him. He still had a kind smile on his face, and seemed to be particularly approachable. Emo Shikong didn't know the details of this person. Seeing that he was amiable and smiling, he didn't want to put on a straight face. It was too unreasonable. Therefore, he nodded slightly at the smiling young master Long unexpectedly. The second young master's next sentence angered him so much that he almost turned hostile on the spot. We are both partners. King Zheng, the Lord of the River of Forgetfulness in front of you, is much more straightforward than you. Compared to a mere King Zheng like you, he is the overlord of the vast Forgetful River. The entire Forgetful River is under his jurisdiction. He is not as hard to choose as you are. Since you're so indecisive and dilly-dallying, this young master will help you make a choice so that you can go ashore quickly. King Zheng's lips trembled slightly, his body trembling fiercely. He couldn't help but roar angrily from his throat. The choice you speak of is to frame my sister? Second young master, is all of this you're doing? Chapter 5387. A servant in green, who had been standing behind the second young master, looked up coldly at King Zheng. King Zheng, please mind your words in front of my master. King Zheng's face was full of anger. He clenched his fists and suppressed his anger. Wang Cheng, the young master of the Omega Kotoku, raised his hand indifferently and dismissed the servant in green. Before King Zheng could suppress the anger in his heart, he heard the Lord of the River of Forgetfulness say with a smile, King Zheng, you've misunderstood the second young master. This young Master Long was still smiling at him with a kind face. Although this person always had a smile on his face and looked very understanding, for some reason, King Zheng, Mo Shikong, couldn't help but shudder when he heard his voice. Actually, this matter doesn't have much to do with the second young master. The main responsibility lies with me, the Lord of the River of Forgetfulness said to him with a smile. However, the more he smiled like this, the more it made Jin Wang's hair stand on end. He felt that this man in front of him seemed to be wearing a thick mask, and he couldn't read any thoughts from his face. The Lord of the River of Forgetfulness said with a smile, "When I passed by your courtyard, I saw your sister walking over from afar. Ah, I swear, I was just joking with her." Young Master Long smiled brightly at Mo Shikong. "I didn't expect her to take it seriously. Take away all the bottles and jars that I've been fiddling with." The anger in Mo Shikong's heart skyrocketed. He glared at the Lord of the River of Forgetfulness, who was putting on an act, and looking pale with fright. You. He raised his hand and pointed at Long Yun. His entire face was dark. What grudges did he have with this person? Why did he have to frame him like this? "It's strange, your sister doesn't know what those bottles and jars of mine are for." Young Master Long pursed his lips and looked a little aggrieved. "I already told her that these things aren't fun. Even a little bit of it can destroy a person's life. Who knew that your sister would be so bold?" Not only was she not afraid at all, she was very happy. He left happily with these bottles and jars in his hands. "How would I know that your sister would take it seriously? It was just a small joke." Mo Shikong was so angry that his vision turned black. He pointed at Long Yun and moved his lips. He couldn't help but shout, "You deliberately framed her." "What did I do to frame her?" Young Master Long pouted. Mo Shikong immediately saw that the elegant and handsome young master in front of him had turned into a pale old woman with wrinkles all over her face, in less than a second, with cracking sounds coming from her bones. What kind of special ability was this? How could it be so terrifying? Mo Shikong's heart trembled, and he suddenly took a step back. In a matter of minutes, a handsome man had transformed into an old and decrepit woman. Despite such a transformation, there was no sign of abnormality in his body. If he was hiding among the enemies, he could transform into a new face and body at will. Then, it would be impossible to catch him even in 10,000 years. Long Yun chuckled and glanced at Mo Shikong. "Prince Zheng, don't think too much. Your sister really isn't worth it for me to rack my brains and frame her." In fact, he had just fiddled with the medicine bottle in the courtyard and pretended to accidentally pour some powder in. Chapter 5388. Su Shitao was already harboring evil intentions. When he saw the flowers and plants that were contaminated by the powder instantly wither, he could not suppress his curiosity and walked forward to ask. What happened next almost did not need him to explain. Su Shitao himself fell into the trap and developed step by step according to their plan. Long Yunjin did not understand why Mo Shikong was so angry. His own sister was stupid, so how could he have the face to blame others for framing her? If it wasn't for the fact that Su Shitao had always hated the young crown prince consort and wished for nothing more than to kill her, how would he have taken away all those bottles and jars? If his younger sister had the slightest bit of intelligence, she wouldn't have believed his words and really taken those bottles of poisonous powder and bugs to stuff them all into her own body, planning to use them to secretly deal with the crown prince consort. Therefore, Su Shitao could not blame anyone for ending up in this state. King Zheng clenched his fists tightly and could not help but roar in a low voice. "Second young master, everything is as you wish now. My mansion of King Zheng has been exposed to the public, and the reputation of treason will soon land on my head. The entire mansion of King Zheng colluding with the Heavenly Fate dynasty will soon be made public. But what good will it do you to do this? If I am in the imperial court and hide in the shadows, at least in the short term, I can still provide some help, right?" King Zheng, Mo Shikong, gritted his teeth and said in a low voice. Now everything was over. It was said that the Eastern Palace had found a pile of bottles and jars from Tower's body and used them to concoct the basic mutated liquid. This matter was indisputable. King Jing's mansion of Heavenly Fate Dynasty had colluded with the Heavenly Fate Dynasty. Young Master Omega Kotoka smiled coldly at him. King Zheng, you don't really think that you can overthrow the Mo family with your own actions, do you? Not to mention that the great emperor is not so easy to fool. You can't even get past the crown prince. Moreover, the great emperor still has several blood brothers. This young master has helped you plan everything. No matter what, it seems that it will not be your turn to ascend the throne. Young Master Omega Kotoka glanced at him coldly. King, don't use the trick you used to fool my father in front of this young master. King Zheng was tongue-tied and could not say a word for a long time. What do you want to say? This young master saw that you were hesitating and indecisive several times, so I helped you make a choice. Zheng Wang and Mo Shikong stared at the second young master's cold eyes, and his heart couldn't help but jump. You see, isn't everything fine now? King Jing's king of King Jing's Omega Kotoka's king. Mo Shikong's face was ashen from anger, and he glared hatefully at second young master Qin. Now that my identity has been exposed, with Mo Lian's methods, he definitely won't let me off. Of course. Mo Shikong turned back and glared at Long Yun, who was standing aside. Long Yun nodded in agreement and said with a smile, Your sister was whimsical and wanted to poison Xiao Xiao. With his character, it's naturally impossible for him to let your whole family go. Mo Shikong was so angry that his breath was stuck in his chest. He hated that he could not kill this abominable person in front of him. Since he knew that the matter would be so serious, he still had the nerve to make such a joke. He directly pushed his sister into the Ministry of Justice's prison and pushed the entire King Zheng's mansion into eternal damnation. Young Master Omega Kotoku had recovered and no longer looked like an old woman. Chapter 5389. Today, he was still an elegant young master with an excellent demeanor. However, although there was a hint of a smile like a spring breeze on his face, it made people's hearts involuntarily turn cold. The servants, who had been shouting and wrangling along the way, hurriedly threw themselves at Mo Shikong's feet and stammered, Your Highness, what should we do now? The Crown Prince's men have completely surrounded our Prince Zheng's estate. It's really impossible to escape. Your Highness, please give us some instructions. What should we do? Your Highness! Your Highness! Cries rang out one after another. Looking at those servants who were crawling on the ground and trembling incessantly, Mo Shikong, the Prince of Zheng, felt an intense anger in his heart. He suddenly had a feeling that the situation was hopeless. Does second young master want to put me to death? This Qin family's second young master did such a thing without any scruples. He directly tore off the mask that he had been hiding for so long and exposed his identity in front of everyone. How much enmity and resentment did he have with him? The second young master swept a glance at him and unhurriedly touched the ring on his pinky finger. A palm-sized triangular tent suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Do you have anything to pack? The second young master asked indifferently. When he said this, Mo Shikong's fury burned even more fiercely. Long Yun, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but curl his lips slightly, revealing a faint smile. This Omega Kotoku was really quite amusing. At this kind of life and death juncture, he still asked the other party if he wanted to pack his things? Who knew what he would have done earlier? Mo Shikong was also vexed over this matter. This Omega Kotoku clearly did it on purpose. He already knew that Mo Lian, that fellow, would send people to capture him. Why didn't he ask him to pack his things earlier? Now that things had come to a head, how could he possibly disregard his own life for some worldly possessions? Thus he gritted his teeth and coldly said, No need to trouble yourself. That's really a pity. The Omega Kotoku sighed and silently glanced at Mo Shikong before raising his hand to put him into the tent. Mo Shikong was startled. When he opened his eyes, he saw that he was standing in a gorgeous courtyard. Clearly, this thing that looked like a tent should be a spatial spiritual residence built by an armament refiner. He hurriedly shouted outside, What about the people in my estate? The Omega Kotoku said coldly, This spatial container can't carry too many people. At most, it can only carry a few more. Then quickly bring my parents and wives and concubines along. Second young Master Qin curled his lips and pretended to ask carelessly. Then you don't want these things in your estate anymore? In the face of such a disaster, who would still think about such trivial things? Mo Shikong said without hesitation. No need. Bring one or my son, my father and mother. Not a moment later, second young Master Qin's aloof voice was heard. All right then. Jojo, don't worry about these troublesome matters. Mo Lian reached out to help his wife to the bedside and said with a smile. Take good care of your body. After a few days, when you're completely recovered, we'll go to the ruined temple in the western suburbs. Arbor's eyes brightened. Have you found my seed fragments? Mo Lian nodded slightly. He held Arbor's hand and said, Don't worry, it should be in the ruined temple in the western suburbs. It won't be long before we find it. Xiaomu joyfully nodded her head. Chapter 5390. Arbor couldn't help but twitch her mouth when she suddenly heard a faint sound coming from the window. She quietly complained to Mo Lian. Do you remember when you threw a diaper at the window last time? It directly landed on Xiao Ye's head with a strange fragrance, right? Mo Lian silently twitched her mouth and coughed lightly. No way. Xiao Ye isn't squatting outside the window now. You can shout if you don't believe me. Xiao Ye should be raiding the Prince Zheng estate right now. He definitely wouldn't be squatting outside the window. Xiao Ye, Sir Jojo shouted. She then heard a rustling sound from the window, and a head popped out of the window. The head revealed a row of spotlessly white teeth, and flashed her a full moon smile. This subordinate greets the Crown Princess. Does the Crown Princess have any orders? Sir Jojo blinked as he looked at the charcoal face in front of him. He instinctively felt that this face was very familiar, but he couldn't quite recognize who it was. Crown Princess, this subordinate is Huifeng. However, Huifeng was quick-witted. When he saw the little Crown Princess's strange and dazed expression, he immediately introduced himself and revealed his identity to the Crown Princess. The little Crown Princess revealed a look of sudden realization, and she sized up Huifeng from head to toe no less than 3 times. She suddenly pointed at him and asked in surprise, Huifeng, why are you so tanned? Huifeng must have gone to mine ores, right? How did those shiny ores turn the handsome Huifeng into this charred state? It would have been fine if the little Crown Princess didn't ask, but Huifeng really wanted to cry when she did. A tragic life really didn't need an explanation. He spent all day in Huiping village directing the mining of ores, so his face was a pitch-black mess from being exposed to the elements. Venerable Immortal Jinshang, Zhao Sheng, and Liang Yi have also returned? Huifeng nodded. Does the Crown Princess want to see them? Arbor waved his small hand. Let everyone rest first. I don't have anything urgent to attend to. All right. Huifeng said with a bitter expression. The holy stone ores dug up in Graping Village only filled 1 storage talisman. How much manpower and resources did they have to expend? As long as the formation set up by the ancestor of the Chaoyang clan was extremely huge, they would not be able to deal with it if they went any deeper. Xiaomu gazed at them sympathetically before ridiculing. Back then, the old geezer even bragged in front of me, saying that no one in this world could dig up the Grotto Heaven immortal abode that he had buried besides me. Huifeng nodded repeatedly and hastily said, Senior's words are true. If it wasn't for Supreme Immortal Venerable Jin and the others, we wouldn't even be able to break through the outer array. Actually, the saint veins we've dug up are just a drop in the ocean. Indeed, he did not manage to dig out the innermost holy vein. The ones that he had dug up were only the edges, which was equivalent to just scratching the surface. Senior Chaoyang is indeed an exceptionally capable person. If the Crown Princess wants to dig out all the holy veins, she'll probably have to make a trip herself. Arbor was startled and glanced at Huifeng sympathetically. He suddenly patted Huifeng's shoulder. It's been hard on you. Huifeng was so touched that he only wanted to cry. He quickly shook his head and said, It's not hard, it's not hard. This subordinate will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for the Crown Princess. Mo Lian cast a sidelong glance at him, her gaze landing on his charcoal-black face. Go wash your face. Huifeng. He really wanted to burst into tears. After all, several months of mining was involved, Chapter 5391. That charred skin from being exposed to the wind and sun really wasn't something that could be recovered just by rubbing his face a few times. Master, Guifeng really wanted to sob. Can we not assign subordinates to minors next time? Arbor patted Huifeng's shoulder and nodded sympathetically at him. Next time, find some brothers with dark faces to begin with. Emolian. Fuck, why did he want to laugh so much when he heard his wife bickering with his subordinates? Arbor took out a small porcelain bottle and stuffed it into Huifeng's hand. He patted his arm. Huifeng, take a beautifying pill. It should help you recover quickly. There are also several special beautifying ointment in this bottle. I've made it into the size of a pill. Every time you finish bathing these days, crush the beautifying ointment and apply it to your face. This crown princess guarantees that you'll recover your original appearance in less than 10 days. Huifeng's mouth twitched fiercely. He clutched the bottle of beautifying pills in his hand and speechlessly raised his head to look at the crown prince. Why would a grown man like him eat a beautifying pill? If word got out, people would laugh their heads off. The crown prince glared at him warningly. Huifeng instantly quieted down and nodded like a chick pecking at rice. He revealed a silly grin. Crown princess, you treat this subordinate like a master and mother. That's truly too good. Emolian face-bombed and kicked him lightly without thinking. Hurry and scram. Huifeng was talking nonsense here all the time. From the looks of it, he just had too much free time. After Huifeng left, Emolian laughingly scolded him and took out a storage talisman from her pocket. Put this storage talisman away. There's a lot of holy stones inside. Arbor shook his head. I don't need it for the time being. You can keep it. See if Rotten Peach and the others need it first. Emolian stroked his head, but didn't argue with him. She nodded and put away the storage talisman. Did our son disturb you today? Arbor shook his head and said with a vexed expression. The little dumpling is too obedient. When I open my eyes, I eat and drink. When I close my eyes, I immediately fall asleep. Usually, she did not cry or make a fuss. Occasionally, she would make a little noise, but that was enough to make Jojo excited for half a day. Jojo shook his head and sighed. Your son is like you. He doesn't talk much. Emolian stared blankly at his wife's small figure as she turned around and pattered over to the bed. The corners of his mouth twitched speechlessly. Who was the quiet one here? When they first met in Kwoto village, he could count on his fingers the number of words she had said. Wife. Emolian walked up to her and followed her to the bed. You can't do this. What do you think? Arbor reached out and picked up the little girl who was lying on the bed. He glanced at his husband from the corner of his eyes. Shift the blame. Emolian pursed her lips and held Arbor's hand. You can't always think that our son is like me. Isn't he like you? The little crown princess sniffed and turned to ask Eunuch Chun, who was chuckling at the side. Eunuch Chun, tell me. He's like your highness the crown prince. The little imperial grandson is especially like your highness when you were young. He doesn't talk much, eats and sleeps well. He's very obedient. The crown prince, Eunuch Chun, whose family are you from? Back then, you always said that I was annoying. Mother. Arbor sighed faintly and glanced at the crown prince. Husband, guess what mother said to me when she found out about the little dumpling's nickname? Emolian's mouth twitched. Wife. Chapter 5392. Arbor glanced at her husband and muttered in a low voice. I think mother is right. She said big glutinous rice ball and little dumpling are really a pair of father and son. Our son is just like you. Big glutinous rice ball? Wasn't he called little glutinous rice ball before? He had upgraded, hadn't he? Emolian didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at his wife's serious expression. Jojo was actually serious. She probably agreed with her mother's words. You are glutinous rice ball's wife, Tuanzi's mother. The crown prince suddenly pounced on his wife, held her in his arms and bit her, causing Lord Jojo to exclaim. The crown prince was too presumptuous. There were many little palace maids and eunuchs watching. He dared to act so brazenly. Jojo was itching to slap him. You, what are you doing? Everyone is watching. Who dares to watch? The crown prince shouted angrily. Eunuch Chun and the others had already left. What a joke. Did they have to wait for the crown prince to be free and chase them away himself? Only those who know and be tactful can live a long life. Arbor raised her hand and pinched him. Are you rebelling? Emolien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He raised his hand to stop her and shook his head. I wouldn't dare even if I had 10,000 guts. Arbor suppressed her laughter and nodded seriously. At least you know what's good for you. Let go of the crown princess. I won't let go. Prince Emo hugged her and didn't let go. He snorted angrily. Ever since Little Dumpling came out, all your attention has been on that guy. Jojo, after a while, you probably won't even know what your husband looks like. Arbor punched him on the head. Don't compete with your son for favor. Emolien looked at her aggrievedly and said in a slightly wavering voice, Jojo. Arbor tried his best to suppress his laughter. He tilted his head and looked at him. Suddenly, his gaze fell behind him. His little face was slightly dazed. Emolien. Jojo poked him on the shoulder. Humph, what for? Crown Prince Emo responded in displeasure. His wife doted on his son more than she doted on him. The Crown Prince was in a bad mood. Arbor poked his shoulder a few more times. You turn your head, turn your head. Emolien turned her head slightly and glanced behind her. Suddenly, her eyes widened. He saw baby Emo, that little rascal, floating behind him. His entire body was suspended in midair, and his pair of pitch-black phoenix eyes were staring at him without blinking. His face was expressionless. Which father would be able to witness such a scene? Her son, who was not even a month old yet, was staring at her with his chilly eyes. She did not know when he had floated behind her, and his gaze was fixed on her. You're a baby. Please be a normal baby. Act like a human. Pfft. Baby Emo smacked his little mouth and spat out a small mouthful of bubbles. He continued to look at his father expressionlessly and exchanged glances with him without blinking. Arbor quickly walked over and reached out to take baby Emo. This little kid was too cute. Look, he was clearly such a small child, but he had an expressionless old face. He was too much like his father. Haha. Emolien was a step ahead of his wife and carried the little rascal in his arms. Unexpectedly this time, he managed to save some face for his old father and didn't use his internal energy to shake him off. My son, when I'm talking to your mother, can you not be a spirit behind my back? Emolien's reply was baby Emolien spitting out a mouthful of saliva. Was he human? Chapter 5393. With A. This fellow opened his toothless mouth and glanced disdainfully at his dad. Arbor circled around her husband and reached out to hug her son. But Jojo's lotus dodged her several times. What are you doing? Sir Jojo glared at his husband angrily. Emolien hugged her son and patted him twice. Wait a moment, wait a moment. I reckon he's about to poo. After he's done, hubby will wash him before handing him to you. That's fine too. The little stoic quickly retracted her hand and nodded earnestly. Don't throw the smelly diaper around this time. It'll be so embarrassing if you throw it on royal father's face. Emolien. It had to be said that Emolien, this fellow, had developed a set of experienced procedures after repeatedly waiting on her son to poo. As long as she paid attention to her son's complexion, she could guess that the little fellow was about to come. How did you know he's about to poo? The little stoic looked curiously at her husband, who was fiddling with a clean diaper. Hubby, you're much more adept at this. Try changing a baby's diaper 6 or 7 times a day. How can you not be adept? Prince Emo rolled his eyes. Jojo, don't tell me this fellow doesn't poo when I'm not around during the day? Arbor shook her small head. He doesn't even pee much, let alone poo. She suddenly paused, as if she had discovered a new continent. She said excitedly, Hubby, have you noticed that it's easier for air to poo when he's facing you? Emolien, Ma Jiechin, who had just entered the room, almost died from laughter when she heard this. She hastily interrupted and teased. That's right, that's right. I think Emolien has a face that makes baby Emo want to poo. Emolien simply didn't want to speak to this rotten peach blossom. Hubby, it's really been hard on you. The little stoic sighed and looked sympathetically at Emolien with sparkling eyes. It can't be helped. Little Furball wants to poo whenever he sees you. In the future, you have to come back on time no matter how busy you are. Wife, if your eyes didn't flash with a faint smile of schadenfreude, your tone would seem much more sincere. Husband, don't panic. Things will get better when the little dumpling grows up. I'll have to trouble you for now. Emolien didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he nodded and dryly told his wife, "It's not hard at all." Wuxia was laughing so hard that she fell over. She dragged a stool and sat down beside Emolien. "Come, let me see. My little dumpling really looks like Jojo." Emolien. This person's ability to lie through his teeth was really bad. She clearly had a wrinkled little face, and nothing could be seen. Speaking of resemblance, the only thing that could be seen now was the little dumpling's deep and beautiful phoenix eyes. Wasn't he just like his father? Most importantly, his wife wasn't a modest person. As soon as someone said that her son looked like her, she would immediately nod in agreement with the "you have good taste" expression. She would look at that person and praise him repeatedly. "You're absolutely right. The little dumpling really looks like me. He'll definitely be very beautiful in the future." Emolien glanced at Wuxia and saw this guy secretly twitching the corner of his mouth. Clang. The hall's door made a heavy noise. Sir Guangguang ran in breathlessly. When he saw Arbor, it was as if he had seen a relative he hadn't seen in 800 years, and he howled as he pounced on her. "Aunt Xiao, the little monk and I were beaten up today." Arbor was startled and turned around to see the little monk and little monkey walking in. Chapter 5394. What happened? Xiao Mu was at a loss for words as she stroked the light condensing mirror's bald head. This 10,000 years old congealing Jing, who is old but doesn't have wisdom. Its intelligence is probably not as high as the little monk's. Kong Kong, come to mother. Arbor waves at him. The little monk hastily strode over to Xiao Mu's side and stood still. "What happened to your face?" Arbor slightly narrows her eyes. Her sharp gaze falls on the left side of his face. "There's a shallow bruise. If you don't look carefully, you won't notice it." "Nothing happened." Congealing Jing cries more and more miserably, howling louder and louder. "I was beaten by someone and I also have a bruise here on my neck." Arbor looks at the neck that Congealing Jing is pointing at, and sure enough, she sees a 2-finger-wide bruise. "What happened, Kong Kong?" Arbor pulls the little monk to her side, looking at him with a serious face. "Who bullied you?" The little monk scratches his head, looking at Arbor with a bit of embarrassment. "Mother, did I cause trouble for you?" "Actually, it's nothing." "What do you mean nothing?" The little monkey angrily jumps in front of Arbor, his face filled with righteous indignation. "Little sister, when we were monitoring the teacher's lesson today, someone provoked us." "Yes." Congealing Jing hurriedly nods. "A few especially bad children provoked the three of us, looking for trouble." "Amipa." The little monk puts his hands together, blinking his eyes. "Two little benefactors. You don't have to say any more. It's actually just a small matter." Seeing the little monk like this, Arbor knows that he's going to start nagging again, so she quickly interrupts him and changes the topic, pretending to be curious. "Guangguang, why don't you tell us who provoked the three of you?" "Your Highness." Eunuch Chen, who had hurried over, glanced at the three children with a strange expression. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Highness, the Crown Princess, Lord Lu from the Imperial Astronomer, and Assistant Minister Zhang from the Ministry of Justice, have come to ask for forgiveness." Emolien stared blankly, then glanced at the three little ones without batting an eyelid. "Come out with me." Lord Guangguang hurriedly grabbed the little monkey's sleeve and shook it secretly. The latter lowered its head and glared at him fiercely. The little fellow was so frightened that he retracted his hand and quickly stood properly. Arbor saw that the three of them were exchanging flirtatious glances. His heart was slightly moved. He held the little monk's hand and patted it lightly. "Kong Kong, you've never lied before." The small monk hurriedly said, "Amitba, monks do not lie." Arbor rubbed his head. "Then tell me, are these people who came to ask for forgiveness related to your matter?" The little monk thought for a moment, then nodded his bald head honestly. "Mother, don't be angry, okay?" Arbor pinched his little chubby face. "I'll settle the score with you guys later." After saying that, she went to settle her son, who had fallen asleep after pooping, and turned to leave the hall. When she reached the entrance of the main hall, she heard the faint sound of children sobbing before she even stepped through the door. When she entered, she saw a row of 7 to 8-year-old children kneeling at the entrance of the main hall. Several stern-looking imperial court officials were pleading for forgiveness to the crown prince. Arbor glanced at the row of children kneeling on the ground. When she saw their faces clearly, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Chapter 5395. The group of children kneeling on the ground looked extremely miserable. Not to mention their bruised faces, their eyes were swollen like walnuts from crying. When they saw the little crown princess leading Guangguang and the little monk into the main hall, their eyes blazed with hatred when they met their enemies. The children's gazes as they stared at Guangguang and the little monk were truly peerless. Official Lu of the Imperial Astronomer repeatedly apologized to His Highness the Crown Prince. "Your Highness, please forgive us. My unfilial son was rude and offended the little sir. This lowly official has already taught him a harsh lesson." Lu Yimei's chubby little face had 2 lines of tear stains, and he cried even harder when he heard this. Xiao Mu speechlessly glanced at the children who were kneeling unsteadily. She walked up and quietly asked, "What's going on?" Everyone in the room was instantly silenced. The children who were originally crying and making a fuss also looked at each other now. They shut their little mouths tightly and didn't dare to make a sound with flushed faces. Evidently, the adults had already harshly admonished them at home. Don't be rash in front of His Highness the Crown Prince. Especially don't yell and cry in front of the Crown Princess. Lu Yimei had 2 lines of tears and snot running down his face. There was a bruise on his eye, and his chin was swollen. He looked mournfully at the stoic-faced crown princess in front of him, and didn't even dare to breathe loudly for a moment. Arbor turned to look at congealing Jing, who was cowering on the side like a quail, and his gaze turned slightly severe. "Guangguang, did you guys hit them?" The little monkey also didn't dare to speak now and hid next to the door, his 2 small hands clutching the door without speaking. "Kong, speak." The little stoic lowered her head to look at the little monk. The little monk blinked and nodded honestly. "We hit them. 3 against a group, and they were all beaten down." "Everyone. Why did they fight?" Arbor asked with knitted brows. "I don't know." The little monk looked at Arbor in bewilderment, but his expression was very magnanimous. I just heard Guangguang shout fight." Little monkey rushed up. I thought I have to be loyal, so I also went up." The corners of Emolien's mouth twitched. Beside her, Hu Shichen was convulsing with laughter. He raised his hand to rub the little monk's head and praised, "What a loyal and good child." The little monk secretly glanced at Arbor. "Mother, did I do something wrong?" The little stoic ignored him and directly turned to look at the light-condensing mirror. Guangguang Dren took a step back with a guilty conscience. When he saw Jojo Dren's cold gaze sweeping over him, he hurriedly confessed, "Auntie, Lu Yimei is too despicable. He's been snatching my drumsticks for 3 days in a row. You're even fighting for seats. He always thinks that he's the boss and forces us to be his underlings. If I don't teach him a lesson, the heavens will not tolerate it." Arbor. "You idiot, are you still a 10,000-year light-condensing mirror? Earlier, you wanted to suffer in order to save face and refused to call me auntie. But now, once you jump out of the age gap, you freaking let yourself go. I told you to protect Kong, but you immediately assumed the role of a child and actually fought over drumsticks with a child whose real age is only 7 or 8 years old. Don't you feel guilty and ashamed?" Among these 3 fellows, apart from the little monk, who is truly 6 years old, the other 2 only look immature. Look at how ruthless they are, beating up a group of children in minutes. Chapter 5396. Truly, it was very good. The little monkey probably also saw that Arbor was about to get angry, so he hastily ran to her side. He slightly swayed Arbor's sleeve and said pitifully, "Little sister, don't be angry. I swear, it won't be like this next time." On the side, Guangguang also nodded continuously and looked at the female jinx in front of him with trepidation. He also knew that his actions were a bit absurd, But at that time in the cafeteria, there were so many brats watching. If he didn't fiercely teach Louis May a lesson, how could he live up to his super high martial prowess? Moreover, he had already wanted to beat Louis May up for a long time when he looked at his chubby face. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Guang Guang and the other two and reprimanded. It's not that I don't allow you to retaliate. It's not wrong for you to retaliate when others bully you. Why must the guilty party complain first and make false accusations? Arbor coldly snorted as she stared at Sir Guang Guang's evasive eyes. Before this, Arbor really thought that someone had bullied the three of them in the kindergarten. In the end, no one had bullied them at all. Instead, it was 1 against 3, 3 against a group, and all of them were knocked down. Those children kneeling on the ground clearly had injuries on their faces, and there were probably even more hidden injuries on their bodies. How was this a group fight between these 3 frauds? It was clearly crushing a bunch of rookies and feeling very good about themselves. Arbor coldly said, "Give me your hand." She casually took out a ferrule from her inner world and looked at the 3 brats solemnly. Sir Guang Guang jolted in fright and immediately hugged Arbor's leg, wailing at the top of his lungs. "Auntie, we won't dare to deceive you again in the future. Please forgive us this time and don't beat us." A cold smile floated on Arbor's lips. "In your dreams," the little stoic said coldly. "Do you still dare to deceive people next time? How dare you put on an act in front of Jojo, Sama? I'll expose you in minutes." In the end, Arbor knocked on each of their palms 3 times, causing the 3 children to groan and laugh bitterly. Arbor sent the 3 of them to kneel in the small Buddha hall. Then, he turned around and distributed a lot of healing medicine to the children of the adults. After a series of instructions, Official Lu and the others from the Imperial Astronomer were all overwhelmed by the favor and thanked him profusely. After Lord Lu and the others left with the children, Prince Emo grabbed Arbor's hand and said, "You really made them kneel in the small temple for the whole night? What? You want to plead for mercy?" Prince Emo hurriedly shook his head like a rattledrum. "The guilty ones complain first. You should be punished for not telling the truth." Arbor glared at him. "It's all your fault. She didn't know how to teach her children. All she did was spoil them and give them whatever they wanted. Back then, you and Xiao Sun were led astray by you. Wife, can we not bring up the past?" Prince Emo wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did you and Xiao Sun get dragged into this all of a sudden? Weren't they innocent? At night, Guang Guang and the others were sighing in despair inside the small Buddha hall. Suddenly, they felt a chilly breeze behind their necks. When they turned around to look, they discovered that the door to the small Buddha hall had somehow opened a crack. The 3 shrunk their necks and almost fainted when they turned around. They saw baby Mo hanging in front of them, his black eyes staring fixedly at them. "Ah, fuck, be a mature baby. Who are you freaking scaring in the middle of the night?" Chapter 5397. The 3 little ones cried out in unison, looking at baby Mo, who was hanging in front of them with stupefied expressions. Mas Masta? Lord Guangguang's tears were about to fall. He was the closest to little Masta, and when he turned his head, he saw a certain little one wrapped in a little swaddling cloth, staring at him expressionlessly. Why did this scene look a little strange and terrifying? Little Monk smacked his little lips, pursed his lips and coughed lightly. Little dumpling. What are you doing in the middle of the night? This small Buddha hall was a little far away from the East Palace's main hall to begin with. In the middle of the night, they could only hear the wind howling outside. Who would have thought that when they turned their heads, they would see a little thing hanging in midair, staring fixedly at them? Baby Mo abruptly fell from midair. It scared Lord Guangguang so much that he hurriedly rushed forward and stretched out his arm to catch his little Masta. You, what are you doing? Little Monkey also hurriedly jumped up and surrounded baby Mo with Kong Kong. Looking down, they saw baby Mo staring at them with a pair of black eyes. The little arms and legs wrapped in swaddling cloth moved, and a few lollipops suddenly hit their heads. Lord Guangguang looked down at the lollipops on the ground and hurriedly picked them up. Little Monk didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at him and said, "Little dumpling, did you wander here in the middle of the night just to give us candy?" Sigh, it really scared me to death. Little Monkey very contentedly reached out to take a candy, peeled off the wrapper, and stuffed it into his mouth. Auntie is telling you, scaring people to death. You can't be like this in the future. But speaking of which, we are really unlucky today. Who would have thought that those cowards would actually complain to their parents? Their father even brought those cowards to find little Missy to make trouble for us. Simply preposterous. Little Monkey sat cross-legged on the ground and slapped his thigh angrily. Isn't that so? Lord Guang, who was carrying the little dumpling, was also not happy to kneel. He simply sat down and said angrily, "Those cowards on the surface, they were respectful to us, but later on, they complained to their parents. The next time I see them, I will beat them up every time I see them." The small monk wrinkled his nose and clasped his hands together. "Ba, you're not right. You'll teach my younger brother bad things. Furthermore, I feel that the lords who came today didn't seem to be here to complain at all. Instead, they seem to be here to apologize. It's just that Nyangqin felt that we were in the wrong. Moreover, one must have love for one's schoolmates and not be too heavy-handed. That's why they punished us by making us kneel here." The little monk nodded his little head in a serious manner. "You two should be more careful in the future. Before you do anything, you have to use your brain." "Shut up." Little Monkey roared at him impatiently and licked his lollipop. "Why are you so long-winded? You're so young, yet you act like an old man." Kong blushed and quickly retorted, "I'm not long-winded, I'm just a little talkative." Lord Guang stretched out his hand and stroked the little monk's bald head. With a serious expression he said to him, "Why are you arguing with a girl? You see, my uncle-in-law never fights with my auntie. You have to know that you can't win. If you can't win, you'll be scolded. The gains don't make up for the losses." The little monk closed his mouth thoughtfully and obediently sat beside Lord Guang without saying anything. Chapter 5398. The little monkey grumbled angrily. "After those cowards made a fuss today, I didn't even get to eat dinner. If only I could have a bowl of hot mushroom soup right now, sigh." The little monk didn't have high expectations, but when he thought of his mushroom soup, he felt even more wronged. What was the use of having an inner world? His storage talisman was taken away by his mother before he was punished to kneel, and his inner world was sealed as well. Now he only had a praying mat for him to kneel on, and it was especially miserable. He was really innocent in today's matter. This little monk was also punished to kneel while watching the show, and didn't have to do anything from the start to the end. While they were talking, a big pot of soup suddenly appeared in front of the three little ones. The hot soup was still boiling, and there were all kinds of vegetables in the pot, including the mushrooms that the little monk had been thinking about for a long time. In the blink of an eye, there was a plate of roasted chicken, a plate of red braised meat, and 3 bowls of shiny holy rice. "Master, you are our savior." Lord Guang's tears were about to fall again. He held the bowl of holy rice with a touched expression, and without another word, he picked up his chopsticks and started eating. Kong raised his hand and patted the baby's swaddling clothes. "Little brother, you are really capable." The little monkey scooped a bowl of soup, and after taking a sip, he paused and turned to look at baby Mo thoughtfully. "Hey, don't you think that it is very strange that he can open an inner world at such a young age?" "What's strange about it? My family's little dumpling was a God Realm level 8 expert when he was born, and he advanced to God Realm level 10 in a short while. What was strange about having an inner world? Now that someone came to tell them that baby Mo had a God Realm with him when he was born, they wouldn't find it strange at all." The little monkey ate 2 mouthfuls of rice and nodded. "That's true. Little Dumpling is really the most talented person I have seen in the past 300 years. "What 300 years? I haven't seen a second person in the past 10,000 years who can compare to my family's little master." Kong glanced at the two of them and silently ate 2 pieces of mushroom. "One of you stayed in the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm for a few hundred years. The other was suppressed in the depths of the sea for 10,000 years. I haven't seen many people in total." "Shut up." The 2 little ones shouted at the little monk in unison. The little monk held the small bowl and cast a glance at them. He puffed up his cheeks and resentfully shut his small mouth. Humans were all like this. They couldn't listen to the truth. Baby Mo, who was originally lying on Master Guangguang's lap, suddenly stood up and flew lightly to Kong Kong. The little monk quickly put down the bowl and chopsticks in his hand and reached out to catch him. She saw the baby's two black eyes staring at her. She immediately felt very happy. "Brother, we're not quarreling. We're just bickering," the small monk explained in a strange manner. Then he felt that it was somewhat funny. Her younger brother was still so young and couldn't understand. The three little ones had a great appetite and finished half a pot of soup. Half of the roast chicken was also eaten by the little monkey and Lord Guangguang. But the plate of red braised meat was not touched. After eating, the three of them worked together to move the leftovers to the outside of the small temple. Then, they sneaked back and pretended to kneel in front of the shrine for half an hour. The little monk hugged baby Mo and recited the scriptures while kneeling there. Suddenly, his small head sank down and almost hit baby Mo's big head. He was shocked and hurriedly stabilized his body. Looking down, he saw the baby opening his toothless mouth, as if he was laughing at him. The little monk's heart warmed and he smiled at him. Chapter 5399. The little monkey didn't look like he was kneeling anymore. His back drooped as he curled up into a tiny ball, and he cried pitifully, "Sigh, if there was a blanket right now, I would be able to fall asleep immediately." After he said that, they saw a mattress on the floor beside them, and two brand new brocade quilts were placed on the soft mattress. The little monkey quickly crawled over and hugged baby Mo, kissing him twice. "Little dumpling, youngest aunt really loves you to death. You're truly a good, considerate, and sensible child. Youngest aunt won't keep them company anymore. I'm going to sleep first." Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths. Out of the corner of their eyes, they saw the little monkey roll onto the mattress without a care for his image, shake open the two quilts and crawl in. Sir Guangguang yawned and glanced miserably at the thick and soft mattress on the floor. Then I'll also sleep for a bit. I'll kneel again after I wake up." Willpower truly couldn't overcome a sleepy heart. Sir Guangguang also surrendered and rolled onto the mattress. He pulled up a corner of the quilt and fell into a deep sleep. Baby Mo squirmed in the little monk's arms. The little monk was also extremely sleepy, but he still knelt there and said with half-closed eyes, "Kneel for a bit longer. You have to bear the consequences of your own mistakes." In the middle of the night, Mo Lien kept feeling a pair of bright eyes staring at him. He used extremely strong willpower to open his eyes and rolled up from the bed. He happened to meet his wifey's small, stoic, and expressionless face. He face-bombed and exclaimed, "Wifey, what are you doing in the middle of the night instead of sleeping?" He was really going to be scared to death by his wifey. Sitting next to you in the middle of the night and looking at him with a faint gaze, Mo Lien really wanted to cry. The little stoic pursed her lips and suddenly lifted the quilt. She pointed at the mattress and said indifferently, "What's missing?" Mo Lien looked down at his bewildered handsome face. When he saw his wifey's solemn and serious expression, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. "Son, where's our son?" He remembered that before going to bed, he had helped the little ancestor play a game. Then, he had washed him clean and was carried over by his wife. Prince Mo hurriedly got up and flipped the blanket and pillows to search for his son. However, his son was nowhere to be found. He broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly turned to look at his wife. Son. Without another word, the little stoic pulled out her hand and punched his head. "You don't even know that your son is missing. No wonder my mother has always reminded me that you men are not reliable at all. You have to worry about everything as your mother." Prince Mo stared blankly at his wife, who had suddenly lost her temper. His heart was beating like a drum. Wife, he called out to her weakly. The little stoic said irritably, "What should I say about you? Do you admit your mistake?" Wrong. Mo Lien nodded repeatedly, looking like she was admitting her mistake. She asked carefully, "Son, where did our son go?" "Relying on you to keep an eye on our son. You wouldn't even know if our son was taken away 100 years ago. Prince Emo glanced at his wifey aggrievedly. Follow me. The little stoic put on her clothes and put on her shoes before casually wrapping herself in a cloak. Emo Lien was bewildered as he followed his wifey out of the main hall. At this time, the moon was shining brightly, and the pitch-black night sky was dotted with stars. A slightly chilly wind blew in their faces. Emo Lien reflexively grabbed Arbor's hand and pulled her into his embrace. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.